the triplet thing is a personal identifier. I was going to take it for
Okay, we have one more minute and we can, okay, right now we are going to call to order our regular board meeting on Tuesday, August 11th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Roll call, all board members are here. We will stand for the pledge and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Okay. If we can do adopting the agenda, that would be awesome.
I move the governing board adopt the agenda as presented.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Was that 1.5 ayes or was that aye from everyone? Thumbs up. Okay, governing board reports. I'm going to start tonight. I wanted to give a little bit of an explanation as there were quite a few inquiries as to why the motion to the start date of our in-person hybrid model was put on the Monday prior to the meeting. We had our meeting the Tuesday before that, where a lot of information came out. And then from that Tuesday through Friday, from other school districts in our state, in our county, across the country, there is just a lot of up and down. We don't know how long we're going to stay in, so on and so forth. So taking all that information plus emails, the concern for me, for our district then became, we're getting not so much hard information from our state, whether it was the superintendent, the governor, nor the federal government. And at some point in time, consistency for our students got lost in everything, along with the health of employees together with that. So I felt the need to give our board the opportunity to have discussion, further discussion on that, and then decide if that was the direction that we wanted to go, was to give the gift of consistency, knowing that per the executive order, parents and guardians that could not be home with their children would have an opportunity to have them in a safe learning space at school, that we would be working. We had already been working on how to help our students with IEPs, as the federal government was not helping us try to do that. So that was the reason for that decision to have that put on the agenda. The other thing was when it was on the agenda, we had our very healthy, robust discussions. We came to a 4-to-1 agreement. And sometimes when you talk to the public about a decision that you have made, especially one that could be considered contentious, different, the words that come out of your mouth are not put into a context that they were meant for. So there was some talk that we were not supporting each other. And I just want you to think about this as district employees, board members, and community members, and in general, our public. This is now the time to stick together and to make the best of what we have, to know that we are going to be very flexible. We are going to monitor and adjust. Already we're in the second day of the second week of school and we're still making changes. Our employees, teachers in particular, are finding out that they don't have to assign 42 assignments. And we're working all that out. But the flexibility and the monitoring and the adjusting and having this go as well as it can is only going to be successful if all of us pull together and work with what we have. We are not in our own COVID bubble. And at some point in time, we all just have to know that we're here for the children to get what they can get out of what we have to offer them. And when I say that, that means that all of our employees are then thought about, such as our childcare for our employees, our free learning spaces, our ability to listen to employees, to parents, and even to the students when we're now implementing this plan that has never been implemented before. So that was very long, and I'm not going to end just yet, but I do want to thank everybody that has been on this journey and has been working really hard and has been trying to decipher and sift through the day-to-day plans that you have shelved, that you've worked on, that now you're going to take off the shelf because it'll fit here. So none of your work has gone to waste. And those students, I know, Gary, you're going to have sunshine stories, but what I have seen are first day of school pictures all over the place. I know of one former retired employee who raises her grandchildren, who she gets in the car. They pack their lunch in the morning. So they get in the car with the backpack and the lunch. They drive around the block. They walk in the house. She puts her lunch down, takes her backpack off, and sits in her little learning space. So whether you have room or not, our kids are incredibly up to this task if we allow them to be up to it, and remind our employees and our parents to be patient with yourselves, because we do really have your back. We just have to know what to do to help you along. So with that very long but heartfelt beginning to the meeting, I will go to Mrs. Frank, or Ms. Frank, please.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Ordway, for your remarks. Normally, I try to make a brief board report, if one at all, but I've received so many emails from constituents. There are a couple of things I want to address, so please bear with me if this is a little bit longer of a board report than I normally give. So I have not had time to respond to all of the emails that I've received. We've received quite a few. So I do want to address some of the things that have come up, sort of common themes throughout some of the emails. I've received a lot of emails from parents who are upset that we have not opened in-person learning. And there are quite a few comments from parents saying that this is not a serious disease for children. Their children will be fine. They're not afraid to send their kids to school. So I do want to address that the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Children's Hospital Association just released a report on Monday that they've seen a 90% increase in COVID cases in children in just the past 4 weeks. And since May, 86 children have died from COVID, including a 7-year-old in Georgia with no pre-existing conditions. There are another 600 kids throughout the US that were hospitalized in intensive care with the multi-inflammatory syndrome that we're starting to see in children. Now, that's not a huge number of kids, if you're thinking that. So just bear in mind that that statistic is only comforting if you're on the right side of it. If it's your child who's in intensive care or your child who, God forbid, passes away, then the fact that that number is small is meaningless because it happened to your child. We don't want that to happen to any child in Deer Valley, so that is of concern. Some of the other things that I've been looking at, there's a school district in Georgia that has 260 employees that are excluded from work prior to the school year even starting due to testing positive or coming into contact with someone who is positive. There's Cherokee County Schools in Georgia has more than 250 students and teachers who are now in a 2-week quarantine because they came into contact with someone who tested positive after the beginning of the school year. And what really struck me was one parent who said, my child started kindergarten on Monday and was sent home on Wednesday to quarantine for 2 weeks. So this is the open, shut, quarantine, in and out, chaos that we're trying to avoid. At least that was in my mind when I voted to extend online learning until at least the 1st of October or end of the first quarter, unless our public health metrics improved to the point that it was safe to open. So for parents who are expressing their displeasure that their kids are feeling anxious or depressed, I totally understand that, but would your child feel less anxious and depressed if they had 2 weeks of school and then had to go home and quarantine because they came in contact with someone who was sick? I don't think so. So those are, some things that as a board member, I had to consider when I made my vote in the last meeting. If any of the parents or anyone has a proposal or a suggestion or a solution on how we can open schools safely, not having met public health metrics with widespread community spread, I'm open to hearing what you have to say, but I haven't received any solutions other than open up the schools. We're not scared to go. So I am encouraged, however, to see that our cases are declining, our hospitalization rates are declining. I look forward to the state or the different counties being able to meet those public health guidelines so that schools can reopen safely. I hope it's sooner rather than later, but I'm not willing to risk the health of our students, our staff, and our community members to open sooner than we can possibly do safely. So I do want to address that. I did receive a lot of emails from parents who feel very frustrated or concerned about the workload issues now that we're into our second full week of online learning. First of all, I do want to give a shout out to all of our staff, administrators. Everyone's been working really hard to make this successful. We've never started a school year this way before. Many of our teachers have never taught online before, so there's a huge learning curve for everybody. I happen to have a first grader who lives at my house, comes part-time, and I'm helping her with her online learning. She's enrolled at Highland Lakes. So parents, I didn't ignore your emails. I feel your pain. I spent an hour today trying to figure out how to upload a science assignment onto Flipgrid. So what I see, because I've kind of looked to see like what's going on, what I see is the content for at least this class that my little friend is in. It doesn't seem to be a reasonable amount of content for a first grader to learn, but I think the tech issues are what may be completely overwhelming for both students and parents. And if you have more than one kid, if you've got 3 or 4 kids, and you're trying to help them navigate uploading assignments and the directions aren't clear, I can completely understand why that leads to a lot of stress and frustration. So I think my request would be to look at what's going on in Canvas. I mean, I know there's a lot of tech tools that can be very engaging and exciting for students to experience, but can also be very intimidating if parents and students aren't able to upload those assignments independently. So maybe my suggestion would be dial it back on those things and make it easier for people to get that work done independently. Obviously, younger grades will need more assistance, but certainly second, third grade on up, if they have the ability and the clear directions to submit their assignments independently, I think that will relieve a lot of the stress our parents are feeling. And I sent a more detailed email to Dr. Galligan, Dr. Finch, and Dr. Zerbach. So I just want parents to know I did read not every single email, but I read enough to understand what's going on. I also had my own experience as well. So it was quite a takedown for me because I think I'm pretty savvy and I've got a teaching background and I'm on the board and I'm like, what? How do I do this? So I think I'm going to end my report there. I've already taken up probably more than my 15 seconds of fame. And Ms. Order, if you'd like to pass the baton to the next board member. Again, just thank you to parents, teachers, and students who are all working really hard under difficult circumstances to make this year a success.
Mr. Reed?
Sorry, you cut out for a second. I couldn't hear you. I just want to wish everybody a happy welcome back to school for our unique learning environment that we're in. And just to say thank you to our teachers and our school site administrators who've been working so hard and going above and beyond to address tech issues and to be there for crying parents and to support one another. So I know that it's been a little bit of a challenge. And to our district leadership and executive cabinet and Dr. Finch, thank you so much for working so hard. I know you guys have been pulling double duty since March, and I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate you and appreciate everything that you guys have been doing. The last 2 weeks have been, or 6 days of school have been interesting at my house because I have 4 learners that are working. My high schooler is in dual enrollment classes and goes half day, so he loves it. He's got 2 hours of lectures for his college level courses, and they're knocking it out of the park. So kudos to those teachers at Sandra Day O'Connor. I've been able to listen into some of the Zoom calls, and they've been amazing, and a lot of community building, a lot of good work that they're doing, a lot of great discussion that they're having. So that's awesome. My 7th grader has been doing Zoom calls, and she hasn't had any issues being on there. The way that their school does it, the teachers are on for the entire period with them, and they do their independent learning with their teacher, and can turn their camera off while they're doing some learning, but the teacher's always on the Zoom call, and it seems to be going really well. That 7th grade team has been working hard to do a lot of community building. I hear the kids laughing on the Zoom calls. They're telling jokes. They're playing music in the background during independent learning time. The teachers do. So they're really trying hard to build that family sense with them. And then my 2nd and 3rd graders, they're having a hard time. So I can definitely relate to some of the emails that our parents are sending about workloads. I've gotten frustrated. The kids have gotten frustrated. I think we've cried every day. It's been a challenge, and it hasn't been a challenge about the curriculum, like Mrs. Frank said. It's been a challenge about the technology and the new user platform and struggling with that. And the fact that they don't know how to type, and they get frustrated because they can't type and they can't do it fast enough, and they can't write the way that they want to and the way that they know that they could last year, and that's frustrating to them. But the teachers have done a great job, again, with community building and really being attentive to the kids and answering questions. It's been challenging with the technology part. So, I get it. Today I had my son transcribe everything he wanted to say, and I typed it for him because I couldn't watch him struggle with trying to do it any longer. But one thing I did learn for any of the parents that are watching is I got up early this morning and sat down for about 10-15 minutes on each of their Chromebooks and went through all of their lessons for the day. And so I knew what to expect before they were frustrated and before I was frustrated. And that seemed to help. I printed out all of their worksheets they needed prior, so everything was there and we could get through things quickly. And so today went a little bit better than yesterday did. But yesterday we were working well after, I think we stopped working at 4:30, and we had worked all through the day with both of the little boys. So it was rough. Other than that, I have been paying attention to the benchmarks from the county and from the state, and watched every news conference and conference calls that have been available to us. I've read every news article that's been sent. I've read every news article that has popped up in my news feeds, and keeping a watchful eye on everything that's going on. I realize that we are in unique circumstances and situations, and so my ask for us is that we just continue to think outside of the box to find solutions to what's going to work the best for our students and our parents and our teachers as we try to navigate through this, and realize that this isn't normal school, and our kids aren't learning the way that they used to, and our teachers can't teach the way that they want to. And so to try and find some solutions that would bring more equity to our given circumstances right now. So, I know that we've left a lot of discretion up to our principals as far as their daily schedules and their Zoom calls. And I just want to make sure that our principals and our teachers understand that there is flexibility within that and not so much rigidity, that they can flex a little bit, and they can do what's best for their students and use their intuition. I don't want to hear about teachers crying because they feel like they can't do what they think is best for their students. So I'm excited to hear more about the COVID report and to hear about some of the tweaks that I know that we've already been implementing in the district over the last 6 days. So thank you, and happy birthday, Mrs. Ordway.
Thank you. Ms. Tweedy?
Thank you. Happy birthday. I also wanted to address the emails I received this week. I've certainly received a ton of them, and I'm going to be brief. I agree with the two board members who went before me when they addressed the workload. I did read those emails. I reached out to Dr. Finch, and I know that it's going to be addressed, but I in no way want to hear stories about kids having breakdowns and doing work till 9 at night and parents at their wits' end. I will just I did want to make this statement though as a teacher. I know, and I'm pretty sure most of my colleagues would feel the same way. I would never want to hear that a parent and a student of mine were up all hours of the night crying and unable to submit assignments. If it gets to that point, don't submit the assignment, email the teacher and tell her what the problem is if it can't be completed in a reasonable time, because there's a great chance that that teacher's either going to help your students so you're not the one doing it or reduce the workload. Because I know myself as I'm planning for this school year, I'm not sure what the difference is in what students can complete online versus in person. And I'm expecting to be flexible and make adjustments as I learn that. So I think the best thing to do is not even get to that point. Just send the teacher an email so she's aware or he's aware. And I would be shocked if most of these teachers weren't coming up with solutions that didn't involve the whole house crying. So that would be my 2 cents on that, but I do think that adjustments are going to be made. I did want to address some of the other emails. First, I received numerous emails accusing my decision of being political, and I just want to clarify, my decisions are strictly based on what I believe is best for students for education. I'm not even seeking re-election. I have no political motive here. And I don't think anyone that knows me would describe me as a liberal. So I'm not sure where the accusations of political are coming. So I'm concerned, and I'm going to get a little more into this, hopefully not boring anyone, but please just listen to what I'm saying with an open mind and then respond to this. But as a teacher, instruction needs to be high quality and it needs to be consistent, and it can't be with constant interruptions. I want students back in school as bad as you do, and I want us to find a way to do that. So I'm going to start there. And the only reason, and I know a lot of you said, well, 80% of us wanted this and that. Normally, I would agree with giving parents choices if I thought it was a choice we could honor. I was aware more than 80% of the parents wanted in-person graduation. I tried to honor it. It got canceled anyway. I'm sure 80% of baseball fans did not want to have games canceled. They got canceled anyway. The reason, and then I'm hearing that all the other districts are saying this. All of the other districts, I believe that I've read their statements, are saying the same thing a different way. We said we're doing online learning until October unless the numbers warrant reconsideration. I'm fully prepared to reconsider if we hit the benchmarks before October. Other districts are saying when it's safe. I didn't like that language because it doesn't allow teachers to plan their instruction and parents to make plans. If every week we're just going, guess what, it's not safe, everybody come up with online lessons. There were other districts that said at least till Labor Day. But again, the problem with that is we get to Labor Day and if we can't open, we're unplanned. I don't want to have unplanned instruction. So I thought the best thing to do was to plan till October, and then if the numbers warranted reconsideration, bring it back and reconsider. But I want parents to have their plans, and I want teachers to have planned instruction, because high quality instruction starts with high quality planning. So that's why I chose that wording to say the same thing. To the people who are telling me that they'd like their students to go back to school, the benchmarks are optional, I have two problems with that. The people who created the benchmarks have a health background. I do not. I don't have any expertise to override what they say is safe. So I would not be comfortable doing that from an ethical standpoint. But the second point would even be a legal standpoint. As you know, anybody can sue for any reason. If we go back to school when we have not met those benchmarks and we do not have legal immunity and anything happens, we can expect to get sued by a lot of people. And we don't have a good defense to say we ignored the health guidelines because we thought they were optional. So even for the legal risk to the district, I would not support going back without us meeting the benchmark. The next thing I wanted to address is the people who are saying we're making this decision because teachers are scared. I would not make any decision because teachers are scared. And I don't think it's a fair characterization of educators to describe us as a bunch of scared people who are hiding until there's a vaccine. I was at my school 2 days this week distributing technology in person. Many of my friends were coaching your children this summer. They're not hiding until there's a vaccine. That's just not a fair characterization. There may be some people doing that, but I don't believe that represents all teachers. Other people were describing how are teachers different? They're essential, like food workers, like farmers, etc. Because we've gotten very poor. And I would hold both political parties. There's no science here. We've gotten very poor information. I've actually sat down with some medical providers myself. And they said the 5 things you have to look at when you're going to control a virus is prolonged exposure, ventilation, number of contacts, and the distance you are from someone. And so when you look at the different variables, like you take a grocery store clerk, the ventilation's not great, but they don't have prolonged exposure. So when you look at our classrooms, you need to look at the fact that most of them are not ventilated, so that's against us. We can't do anything about the prolonged exposure. The number of contacts are very difficult to control with special area teachers, middle school teachers, junior high teachers. And even if we go on a staggered schedule, the K-5 teachers. So that's another thing, the distance. We're not getting clear guidelines on the distance. And everyone's saying use the science. They're not putting the science out. The way this needs to be looked at, and I'm very frustrated that our state officials have not looked at it this way. They could create a grid and say if you're in a ventilated room, you need to be this far apart. If you're in an unventilated room, you need to be this far apart. You need to wear a face mask made of this material, and it would apply to all environments. We have nothing like that to go on. The guidelines we can't meet, they're telling us when feasible. They're not telling us what to do when they're not feasible or how that increases our risk. So I'll give you one. Initially, it was put students 6 feet apart. Then they said, oh, wait, nobody will fit in their classroom. Now let's put them 3 feet apart. Well, if we half the distance, do we double the infection rate? This is the kind of nonsense we're dealing with without clear guidance. Another issue I brought up, and I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to make this political, but one of the politicians had her chief of staff email us to reopen, and I brought up the staffing issues schools are going to have, and I said we need expedited testing. We cannot have every employee with a cold or a sneeze or a cough calling out until their cold or sneeze goes away. We need a quick way to find out who doesn't have COVID so they can get back in the classroom. But nobody seems interested in solving these problems. And I agree with you. It's political on both ends because the science should be there to give us clear guidance. That's how science works, and it's extremely frustrating. So I share your frustration because I would like to solve these problems and get the kids back in school too. And I'm completely annoyed that that hasn't happened. So those are my comments on the feedback I've gotten, and just know I'm hearing you. And when we hit those benchmarks, we need to address those 5 variables because I do not want to have school where we're calling people every day and canceling it for inadequate staffing because we have rooms with people who've been infected and now we can't use those classrooms. And we have no way to test our employees to prevent an employee shortage. So please reach out to the people that are preventing us from getting a workable plan and asking them to give us clearer guidance if you want the schools reopened. Please do that because I would, for one, be listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tweedy. Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you so much, and happy birthday, Mrs. Ordway. So happy that you could spend it with us this evening. I would like to start out by welcoming everybody back to school and thank you from the top to all the, and everybody in between, all the staff, all the students, all the parents who are on this new adventure with us. Thank you for all that you're doing to make it a successful one. I know that there are bumps that we're encountering along the way, and that I know that everyone is working as hard as they possibly can to get us over, around, and through those bumps so that we can all have successful learning together. I would like to share a couple of good news emails that we got. One was from a parent who has children in our school, and she sent kind words about Mr. Feinberg and Dr. Miller and Mr. Huria. And so thank you. I know quite often my fellow governing board members and I end up with lots of emails of unhappiness or concerns or complaints. And so it makes my heart happy to get a good news email about our staff. And thank you to those 3 principals for making an impression on those students and that family. And the other email that we got was from a gentleman from California who had an interaction with Mrs. Hood at Paseo Hills regarding an American flag. And it was wonderful to hear that he felt like that encounter was a very positive one and that he wanted us to know about that. So thank you to her as well for her good work in dealing with somebody who wasn't even a constituent of not only not our district, but not our state. So kudos to her. We've received the Arizona School Boards Association's proposed 2021 political agenda, and I would like to request that that is on our next agenda as a discussion item so that we can vote on it at the following meeting. The other thing that I'd like to just share is that the delegate assembly for the ASBA has been moved from its normal second Saturday in September to October 17th due to things needing to be virtual. We had, not only was last week the beginning of school, we had a primary, so congratulations to all of our primary winners. I'm sure that like myself, many people are a little election kind of done with it, but I do want to remind folks that we have a vote in November, and there will be 3 board seats for Deer Valley on that, and I hope that Deer Valley will hold a candidate forum, even though it would have to be virtual. So plant that seed with Dr. Finch. And then, like everyone else, I have received lots of emails. I thought I was almost caught up on Sunday night at 11 o'clock when I went to bed, only for it to start all over again. And so I apologize for not getting back to all of those. I think there's about 100 more emails in my inbox. I look forward to hearing from our staff tonight about addressing hopefully those concerns about the excessive assignments for our what looks like K through 4th graders. And I'm also excited, maybe excited is not the right word, but I'm hopeful based on listening to my board members' discussions about the benchmarks and what we might do to consider opening school. And so what I'm requesting that we have an agenda item where we can start talking about what that might look like and what kind of problems need to be resolved. I think that, some of the items that Mrs. Tweedy brought up, those are very important things. And those aren't items that we talked about a month ago. And so it's important to me, and I think important to our constituency based on the number of emails we received for us to start looking at what is a reopening plan going to look at, like whether that is on October 14th or potentially sooner if we're meeting the benchmarks. Because we can't do things like we normally do. Obviously, we're doing school virtually. And I think we need to start talking about that and hearing from district leadership about what that might look like. I know that Dr. Finch provided a little bit of information in his Friday update. I think it's important for us to be a little bit more transparent with our community and our families and our teachers so that they know what we're thinking or what we're talking about. So I'm going to request that, and then I will save the rest of my questions for the COVID-19 update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. And yes, I think that I know you use the word transparent. I'm going to use a different word because kind of that word just bugs me sometimes, because sometimes it has the implication that we're not showing what's going on. So I think that having that as either a report or however we're going to do it, to see what the beginning steps are so we can follow this more closely and see what the plan is going to look like. Ms. Tweedy, you can do your one question, then I have one more thing to say, so go ahead.
I would just like to follow up on Ms. O'Brien's request. I would like to just request it be a work session and as opposed to an item, because this is way bigger of a conversation. And I would also just like to request that we schedule it in a format where board members can spend a great deal of time discussing and asking questions as well, and it's not just presentations. So those would just be my two asks when we move forward with that request.
Thank you very much. So what we'll do is we'll go over it and write down, yes, a tentative shell for that, and then I'll send that out and see if it meets the needs of everyone. The other thing I wanted to say, and I haven't been saying it, is that community ed, under the leadership of Barb Irvin, is truly and has been and will continue to be the key to the logistics to open our schools to our general populations when that day comes, because her staff has been working diligently all summer long with not only the school, the camps, Gary, you'll correct me, but the summer camps, and now also is opening the preschool And all of her best practices that has been followed, as I'm going to say again, diligently, is something that we are going to be able to emulate as the number increases, the numbers of students increase. So when we do open, we will have a fine-tuned machine ready to welcome our students. So I don't want her work and her staff's work to go unnoticed, and nor do I want any of the facilities employees that have been just keeping up on keeping clean and doing water fountains and taping them and making sure there's water stations and hand cleaning stations. So it's the logistics that people forget about that have to be so perfect in order for the rest of the plan to be implemented. So when we say open the doors, there's going to be 5,000 hours that are going to be put into just that one door that gets open for that one classroom for that amount of kids. So anyway, I've taken up more of my time, but however, it is my birthday, so I took a little bit of leeway. So I am now not going to let Dr. Finch have his report because he requested not to do it. So I think that only means that it goes to Dr. Zerback.
Thank you, President Ordaway, and happy birthday to you. I want to echo, President Ordaway, your words about Barb Irvin, and I know Dr. Galligan would do the same. She really has done a spectacular job over the course of the summer with the summer staycation camps. So her and her staff, they are to be commended for all of the work that they have done and the work that they will continue to do in the upcoming weeks, as you mentioned, with our free safe learning space and with our other on-site activities that will be occurring. So thank you very much, Barb, and to your staff. Okay, good evening, President Ordaway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. It's our pleasure, as it always is, as we are here tonight to continue providing COVID-19 updates. So let's get started. Okay, so our agenda is very similar to how it has been in the past. We will begin as we do with our Sunshine Stories. We also have a very brief report on the first week of school, showing you a few of the picture highlights from Twitter. And then we will get into the meat, which is our return to school update of the 3 work teams. And then, of course, at the end, if there are any questions that we have not answered, we will certainly entertain those from you. So our first Sunshine Story is about some of our extraordinary campus leaders and teachers at Deer Valley High School and Desert Sky Middle School. Our Sunshine Stories in today's COVID report are quite lengthy, so I'm not going to read them all, but I would like to highlight excerpts from them, as it truly does display the great work that our leaders are doing. So the first Sunshine Story starts out like this. I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate the amazing employees of yours in the district. In today's climate, I think it's nice to get a little note that has some positivity. I've had 4 children in the Deer Valley schools, and also wanted to let you know that you have 2 amazing principals and 1 amazing AP in the district. Mrs. Patty Resitar, Mrs. Kim Crooks, and Mr. Paul Roskelly are some of the most thoughtful, amazing, kind-hearted, and all-around wonderful principals I have ever encountered. These 3 go way above and beyond for their students, and I don't just mean this year. The parent also goes on later to highlight a teacher, Mr. Eric Axelrod at Desert Sky Middle School, talking about the extra time that the teacher took out of his schedule to help the parent with her child. So that was a great story about some of our leaders in the Deer Valley region. Our second Sunshine Story is about the start of the school year from a parent at Barry Goldwater. That sunshine story is the following. It says, hello, no doubt the negative feedback comes your way sometimes more often than the positive. So I wanted to take a minute to just say thank you for a great first week. Of course, there were some technical issues, which we know about and we have heard from the community, but truly the entire online transition went much smoother than anticipated. More importantly, my child had really valuable educational experiences. There was no loss of learning this week. She is already learning better in studying and note-taking habits, as well as writing skills that she will no doubt carry into college. We also have an excerpt there from a different parent, and that parent is from Esperanza Elementary. That parent says, I have to send a huge thank you to all the teachers. You have held it together through the technical difficulties and the frustration. My son is eager to participate and excited to wake up early every day. I can't imagine what it must feel like. I can tell you and your students and the teachers that you guys are great, and the teacher thanks everything that they do. So thank you for sharing that as well, the parent from Esperanza. Our third sunshine story is going to be highlighted by Dr. Galligan. Dr. Galligan?
You know, you would think I would be a little more experienced with this. I apologize. The third sunshine story comes from a parent at Arrowhead, and she has a third grade student. It started out, I wanted to write this email to let you know how amazing my daughter's third grade teacher is. It's Megan Shelton. The challenge was she didn't have a printer at home, and she was just letting the teacher know that she was going to be late in turning an assignment in, which kind of caused her some anxiety for her child. But at the very bottom, she wrote, then I got another email from Mrs. Shelton saying that the work was at my door. I literally cried. Arrowhead has some of the most amazing teachers, but this one went above and beyond. I couldn't believe she came to my home and brought my daughter the work she would need to have to stay on time, but then also just that she is a great and caring teacher, and that she is so happy that her daughter has Miss Shelton this year. We are so happy to have Miss Shelton also.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. Our fourth sunshine story is from Mr. Miglerino. Mr. Miglerino?
Good evening. So this is a sunshine story regarding our ongoing meal distribution. A shout out to Director Chiarello and her staff as we continue to provide meals for our families. This particular family has students at Terramar and Copper Creek Elementary Schools, and has fallen on some challenging times due to the pandemic. And basically commented that our children were so excited to eat their school meals today, you'd think it was Christmas. So we thought that was a great shout out. Just a quick reminder, we are serving meals daily at all 5 high schools. All the elementary schools have meal distribution twice a week, with the exception of 7 of our campuses. Some of the smaller campuses or campuses in which we're still doing some efforts from the summer work aren't available, but parents can pick up meals at any school from any campus. And we also have 1 site at each region, so 5 in total that do late pickups so that parents can pick up at different times of the day as well. So again, just a shout out to our food nutrition staff that are working hard to make sure that the nutritional needs of our students are being met.
Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Now we have some photos from our first week of school. As you mentioned at the start in your board reports, we are excited to announce that day 1 did arrive on August 3rd. August 3rd happened, and we had thousands of students logging on to connect with their friends and with their teachers. On this slide, you can see just a few of the photos that were taken and posted on Twitter. More will be talked about this later, but here is a sampling of some of the highlights in terms of areas for reinforcement and areas for refinement after week 1. You can see as far as areas for reinforcement, again, teaching and learning is happening in our schools and for our students and teachers. Our campus leaders are doing an absolutely wonderful job engaging in problem solving. Kids are connecting. They are back with others, both with friends that they've already known in the past and meeting new friends going to the future. The staff is embracing the change, as there's been many aspects that are different this year, and so we thank them for that. And we also have many teachers who are supporting the course build process. As far as areas for refinement, we know, as has been mentioned several times this evening, that we have some work to do with supporting our teachers and families with technology. And then, as is stated in the reinforcement, that the course building is happening, but it does come with some challenges. It comes with challenges as far as the staffing in order to do it and the actual work. As curriculum building, it is a big task. And Dr. Galligan will be talking about that more later on in the presentation. Okay, so let's go to the first work team, and that is return to school safely. Ms. Miglerino and myself have some points that we would like to talk to you about tonight. Some pieces are review, but we will repeat them intentionally as we have some new students that are starting on Monday, and we know that their parents might be listening in. We will start with Ms. Mock, who can give us an update about the status of PPE in our district. Ms. Mock?
President Ordway, members of the board, and viewers online. We have been busy for the past month or so ordering and distributing PPE and cleaning supplies to all of our schools. Within the last couple of weeks, we were able to deliver to each of the schools hand sanitizers in half-gallon pumps in order to go on desks. We will be making sure before students return to classes that we have one per classroom. Right now, any office or classroom that has teacher or staff members in it, the goal is to make sure that they have that half-gallon hand sanitizer on their desk, as well as efforts that have been done by the facilities department to put wall-mounted hand sanitizer dispensers, and also in some of the front offices for the high schools, they have the portable hand sanitizer dispensers as well. We distributed cloth masks to the schools as well, at least one for every staff member on campus, and we're prepared to provide at least one for every student who will be coming to campus once our students return. In addition to boxes of disposable face masks for those staff or students who might come on to campus one day and have forgotten theirs. We had ordered a significant amount of face shields, which at this time we are not able to use a face shield by itself without an additional cloth face mask, but we are distributing those to special education staff, speech therapists, audiologists, those who might be working with the population that could put them at risk for additional splashes or splatters toward the face as well. So they will get the face mask and the face shield. In addition to that, we've been working with student support services to get PPE for their staff, including for all of the Head Start and developmental preschools that are going to start on Monday. In addition to some additional transaction shields, or what's also been called the sneeze guard, for any of those face-to-face activities that the staff will be having with students. One item that we have ordered but have not yet received is once we learned that the face shields were no longer going to be accepted alone, folks like our speech pathologists or audiologists, we ordered face masks that have the anti-fog clear opening over the mouth so that those can be used and those staff members will still be able to, or the students working with those staff members will still be able to see their lips moving. So we have some of those. They were a special order. They're not here yet. We expect to have those within the next couple of weeks. Certainly with all of these items, our purchasing department and purchasing director Laura Simonowski, our warehouse coordinator Bob Ramble have done a wonderful job rushing those orders, getting them in, and anytime we submit a request to have the PPE delivered, it is done within a day or two. They are absolutely amazing. Facilities department has been working with our materials distribution center as well for bottles of number 25 sanitizer and 5 microfiber cloths per bottle of number 25 sanitizer. All of those will be going out to the schools this week. That order was delayed a little bit by a shortage of the spray bottles with triggers. Those came in Friday, and then delayed further by a delay on the labels for the bottles. So we went to Plan B and made sure that all of the bottles were properly labeled and are getting all of those out to the schools as well, so that every classroom, every office will have that bottle of sanitizer. And I think that covers it for what we've sent out so far, but we will continue to adjust and get schools what they need. Right now, we just ask them to make sure that if anyone is on your campus and needs these items, go ahead and get it to them. And if you need more, let me know, and we will get you what you need. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Ms. Mock. Okay, certainly one of the highest interest topics, if you will, this evening is the public health benchmarks. These were mentioned by several of the board members in their opening reports. These benchmarks have certainly been eagerly anticipated by folks across the state. These are the metrics that were outlined in Governor Ducey's Executive Order 2020-51 as metrics that would help local LEAs make decisions about reopening in-person teaching and learning. These metrics were originally designed to be released on Friday, August the 7th, but they did come out one day earlier on August the 6th. The webinar followed by Arizona Department of Health Services on August the 7th. There really was not much new information that was offered at that webinar. It really consisted more of a review of the 20-page document that was released on August the 6th. There are many topics that are addressed throughout that document. However, I believe the one that is of most interest to both the board and perhaps our listeners is the metrics that they came up with to help inform us with our decision making. The report identifies 3 specific metrics to look at, and they are listed on this slide. The first one is the case count. The second one is percent positivity, and the third one is the hospital visits due to COVID-like illness. This is sometimes referred to as syndromic surveillance, which is really a fancy way of saying, or a way of predicting potential outbreaks due to other illnesses that have symptoms related to or that look like COVID-19. So with that, there are 3 categories that the report outlines where these metrics could fall. These categories are minimal, moderate, and substantial. And so in each of those categories, it outlines a certain threshold percentage that would need to be met in order to fall into that category. So for instance, in the minimal category, it talks about having less than 10 cases per 100,000, a less than 5% positivity rate, and also less than 5% syndromic surveillance with the COVID-like symptoms and the hospital visits due to those. So those are outlined very clearly in the report. There is a timeline that is included as well for the dates when the new updates will be provided. Right now, the county has, or excuse me, the Department of Health Services has said that they will update these once a week. It will be on Thursdays, and they will be provided on the website. Everyone will be able to see those, and we should be able to see the data at least at the county level. So let's talk a little bit more about the updates. So you can see here, these are the Thursdays that are listed up until September 24th. You can also see the 2 weeks that are covered in each of the dashboard updates. So the third bullet point, which states each data point will represent a 2-week portion, that really is better said that each dashboard update covers a 2-week section of data. That would be a better way of looking at that. And so, Dean, I'm going to ask you if you could click on the link to that dashboard. And if you could scroll down, Dean, a little bit. Keep going, Dean, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. A little bit more. Thank you. Okay, that's good. Oh, good. Right there, that's good enough, Dean, thank you. So hopefully you can see it on your screen. We cannot see it on ours, but what you are looking at is the data dashboard that's on the ADHS website. And so this captures those 3 metrics, and it also captures where we would fall in the state if we were looking at those. And so the data dashboard, it will provide some color-coded links as far as if you meet or don't meet the benchmark. And so this is something that, of course, we will be monitoring very carefully over the upcoming weeks to see where we would fall. There has been a discussion as well, and Dr. Finch may chime in later on this with the NEVIC superintendents as far as what specific data points to be recommended, because ADHS has said that they might be able to provide the data at an increased dive level. So for instance, at a zip code level or perhaps at the district level. There's also been talk about using averages of zip codes that might be into any school district. And so that is something that is part of an ongoing conversation. Dean, if we could go back to the presentation. Thank you. Okay, so this is a very important slide as it speaks to what ADHS is recommending in terms of the minimum points before students would come back to school. So I'll give the public a 15 seconds here to read through this slide and also to the board. Okay, so I don't want to read every single word, but there are important pieces on this slide that I want to highlight. So the first part is this notion that all three of the benchmarks need to be in the moderate or minimal spread category in order for there to be at least some type of in-person schooling. The ADHS report refers to this as the hybrid when we are talking about some students. And so there are many definitions of the hybrid model. And so that is something that we will continue to have in our discussion about how we might think about that, as it's possible that other districts have different definitions than perhaps we might have with that. But again, it talks about that we would need to meet the moderate or minimal spread in order to consider having students and teachers come back. Now, I'll read this line. Specifically, ADHS recommends the following benchmarks be met prior to any in-person learning. And so you can see there the 2-week decline or having the case count in the moderate or minimal. For percent positivity, it specifically references the 7% positivity mark. And then similar as we've talked about with the syndromic surveillance, that there would be 2 weeks where it would be below the 10% threshold there. So that is something that Executive Cabinet has looked at in detail this past Monday. And so that is something that we believe we would want to perhaps align to, given that ADHS is saying this is what we should do when we make these types of decisions. And so I think I was planned to pause there, President Ordaway, as there's going to be a lot of content that is in this COVID-19 report, but I know that this is a big topic. And so wanted to see if there were some questions we could field here, go quite deep here with this, but for time, we need to know at what level you want to go at.
I would like you to continue because there are no comments at this moment in time.
Thank you, President Ordaway. Okay, so the next slide then goes to the summary of the public health webinars. Webinars have been our new best friend in administrative life. There are probably 3 to 20 webinars on any given hour that any of us could attend. And so we prioritize, we delegate out, spread out to make sure that we're covering all the different webinars that are happening. But in general, I wanted to highlight the ones from Maricopa County as we have been aligning our systems with county guidance. And so one point that we have been talking about in the past is this notion of a matrix point system. And if there would be such a matrix that would inform schools when they would perhaps close a classroom or perhaps close an entire school. And so originally Maricopa County was on that track and thinking that they were going to release that information. That's what they had communicated. But we have all learned in the past 5 days that there has been a pivot with that, and that Maricopa County does not plan on producing that matrix point system. And instead, their head epidemiologist have been reporting that they would rather provide guidance on a case-by-case basis. Now, for some of us, that is somewhat that we want to ask them exactly how we think that can happen. However, I have had some talks with Maricopa County, and they have been adding on quite a number of persons that are specific to their support school COVID system. And so I believe they have over 150 new personnel that they have added. And so that is good news to hear, so that we will be able to have a good communication with Maricopa County when COVID-19 concerns arise, when students indeed come back to the campus. The other point that I was going to say on this is Maricopa County also may be able to provide some specific guidance to us regarding how they will do this on the case-by-case basis as we move along. And so that may be something we can report to you at the August 25th board meeting. Okay, so these are some reminders, President Ordway here, again, due to some new students who may be starting with us on Monday, August 17th, that the wearing of the face covering is expected for all of our students and our staff. This is very consistent with the governor's executive order, again, 2020-51, section 5, which states that this is an expectation as long as our public health agencies deem it necessary. And so DVUSD does have a regulation, which is a recent regulation, that is JICA Regulation B, which outlines this. It is pretty much mirrors, President Ordway, the Maricopa County guideline for schools. They do have a very specific guidance for face coverings in schools, and so ours mirrors it 99% on that. And so again, in general, it's that students in the K-12 experience that they are expected to wear that mask, and that is indoors pretty much all the time. We do have some questions about the social distancing, and can students remove the mask when they are indoors. However, I want to be clear with the board and with those that are listening in that Maricopa County has been consistent that at this time they recommend that the mask be worn even indoors, even if there is social distancing for the students or for the staff, that it is that important for the reduction of transmission of COVID-19. If this were to change, of course, we would update that in the order and in our guidance. Okay, so for student COVID-19 reporting protocols, these I will just highlight the bullet points. So of course, in any of these circumstances, the board is aware that if there is a COVID concern, that the adult, the employee, the student, whoever it is, should stay home and not report to the place of work, or in this case, since this slide deals with schools, should not report to school if it is a student, and that's consistent with the home isolation guidance from Maricopa County. The parent and perhaps with the student's help, if the student was older in high school, they would complete the COVID-19 information collection tool. There is more to the process than just that, but that is a tool that we use to start the process. And it's also a tool that can be used perhaps if there are hours in the night when they would not be talking to a district staff member, that it helps walk them through some of the questions that they will need to think about when we have the interview with them. So that collection tool form, or the information from that, would be sent to representatives from the district to help us. The parent would also complete the absence reporting procedures, and that's the ones that they would normally do if the student was absent, to make sure that the school is aware. The parent also has, and this has been consistent since March 13th, I think, going back that far ago, that you can email COVID-19 concerns at dvusd.org, and that is an account that's checked daily. Or they can also contact the campus school nurse. The other responsibility for the parent is to respond to the school or the county, or it could be both, for that contact tracing interview. And so that's an important piece that helps us find out which other students or potential staff members may have had that contact of within 6 feet for more than 10 minutes. And so that helps us identify those folks and then to engage in the quarantine procedures for any of those members, and also to inform them to make sure that they're monitoring for any of those symptoms that perhaps would develop. As far as on the school district's responsibility, it is our responsibility. We want to make sure that that child is not on campus if there was a report that came in about a positive test of COVID-19. We also will notify Maricopa County Department of Public Health when the COVID-19 cases arise. Now, there's an asterisk there, President Ordway, because at this point, we are only required to report when multiple cases arise at a site. However, Maricopa County has asked and placed the request to schools to report any case that arises, even if it doesn't arise to the multiple case threshold, and we will comply with that. That is an important piece to helping prevent the spread of COVID-19. And so we have been working with Jackie Duarte, our district nurse coordinator, making sure that those procedures are in place. And so we continue to communicate with our nurses about that, and more will come out by the end of the week, as that has been something that county has asked us to do. That will likely change due to changing guidance or changing the actual law for that, or there's a statute that governs that, and the county is working with the council for the state, and so that will likely change and require us to do it anyways, even on a single case. And so we'll just be ahead of the game there and do that from the start. It's also our responsibility to notify the parents if there has been the close contact. And so this comes in the form of the email, so we always have a written communication and then also a phone call. And I put in parentheses there, of course, ALS supports with this process when it involves the students. Miss Jenna Moffitt, who's across the room from me, of course, she and her department would support when we have concerns with any close contact with staff members and going in that process. As well, with the school and district responsibility is to proceed as it states with any of the necessary disinfecting procedures. Mr. Miglarino will cover those procedures later, but if those are necessary, of course, the school will be responsible for helping making sure that communication gets to the correct personnel. And then also that the sample letter would be released to the parents who of students who have had close contact. There is a sample letter that Maricopa County is scheduled to release soon. There's a bullet point on their website, and it says that pretty much what I just said. It says this letter is almost ready, and so we expect that probably to be released, perhaps even tomorrow at their Wednesday webinar, as it has moved to Wednesdays instead of Thursdays. And if not, then I would imagine no later than next week. Okay, so as far as our COVID-19 protocols, again, this should not be a surprise, as we have stated for many months that we follow the guidance of Maricopa County. And so we have taken a snip here from the home isolation guidance, and that's what you see here. Really the only piece I would perhaps draw attention to, I believe that Jenna drew some attention to this at our last meeting, but there has been an increased amount of days for folks who have had a severe or critical illness or are severely immunocompromised. And so that has changed to the 20 days in that particular guidance. And there's also the 24 hours fever-free. It used to be 72 hours fever-free, but now it's 24 hours without any fever-reducing medicine. And so those are our, that would be our home isolation guidance for our students when there's a positive test. For students that would be in close contact, again, this is following Maricopa County Department of Health, and that really hasn't changed too much. That has been the 14 days that someone would self-quarantine. Now, sometimes in the public, we do hear from folks who say, well, how come if someone has a positive test, it's 10 days, as opposed to if you don't even have it and you've been exposed and you need to do a 14-day. And that, of course, is due to the incubation period. And right now, our epidemiologists from around the nation and state and local are saying that the 14 days is the time frame that we would need to be mindful of, is that virus could appear up until that full 2 weeks or 14 days. And so that's the reason that it is longer than the 10 days if you have the virus. Okay, at this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Miglarino, who will come on and talk more about the routine cleaning procedures. Mr. Miglarino.
So just to be brief, so we have, as Ms. Mock mentioned earlier, we have a sanitizer. It's a Hilliard product. It's fancily named number 25 that we will be using throughout the day. It is a sanitizer. We have created instructions and all the guidance necessary for it to be used by any of our personnel. And it is a chemical that is suited for that specifically. Our custodial staff and other key individuals through the district will actually be using a disinfectant, a hospital-grade disinfectant at the end of the day, and we have provided guidance for those particular people. Since it is a disinfectant, it is a stronger chemical, so we want to make sure that only those people that have been trained are using that particular product. The next slide will talk about what happens during an outbreak. And as Dr. Zurbach mentioned, there is a process for reporting. We will use that information to then actually do what some people refer to as a deep cleaning. And if we do get symptoms that are happening while classes are being held in person, we will relocate those students to another space. We have the ability to purge the indoor air with outdoor air, so we'll just transfer, we'll establish the systems to be able to pull outside air into that space. And then we have an emergency response action team, which are select facility staff members that will perform a thorough disinfecting of that space. The students will then be able to return to that space the following day. So because of the materials that we'll be using for the thorough disinfecting, when we know that we have either select symptoms or a positive ID of something that of a COVID positive case.
Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Okay, our next slide, President Ordway covers communication. And as you know, we have had much communication that has gone out in various formats and mediums to our parents and our teachers. As you can see here, probably the one I would highlight the most, and Dr. Galligan may add on to this later, are the parent webinars that we did make a concerted effort over the past 2 weeks to get out information to our parents as far as some of the resources for technology. And we had thousands of folks that joined us for that particular webinar. And then Dr. McCusker and her team also provided multiple or 2 support parent webinars for parents of students with special needs. We do know that is a topic that has more interest and continuing interest. And so I know that Dr. McCusker, myself, and others, we're continuing to work on that. We have had multiple visits, as you can see, to our return to school sections. We're in the 100,000s there at this point. And then as far as communication going forward, we did have a webinar directly for some of our staff, our K-8 staff. And so this is something that we may continue going forward, as we know it is an effective way to directly communicate and making sure there's a singular message that is going to the staff. And so some of this may continue regarding some particular topics in the future. Okay, let's talk about the free, safe learning space. This again is, I would imagine, a topic of high interest for you. So to give you an update, most of this was contained in the Friday board update, but we have 6 sites that are across the district right now that are the houses for the students that will be attending the free, safe learning space. We have approximately 450 to 475 students that are enrolled in that. As you know, the registration, it ended last week at noon to be eligible to start on August the 17th. We will look to have multiple entry points for this particular program that we are offering during the time that our schools remain closed. However, I do want to make sure the board is aware that this is a difficult process from the staffing side of this. So it is something that we need time in order to complete that registration process. And so it is something right now that we are looking at in terms of cycles And so it likely would be a 2-week cycle from when the August 17th date starts that we would look to open the enrollment process again if additional parents wanted to enroll their children, as it does take, it takes time in order to staff this. And it also takes time for Barb Urban, who we mentioned at the start of this meeting, in order to plan for some of the logistics for that. We are pulling staff, as it indicates in the slide, from across the district. So we have Mr. Ernie Mesa, our Director of Transportation. He has been absolutely wonderful with us in providing support with our bus drivers that can help with our students at the free, safe learning space, especially some of our younger students who may need some additional support with the technology. And so we again thank Mr. Ernie Mesa and his staff for that. We also thank our principals who are working to provide some help from our paras and our other classified staff who can do that at our sites. I also want to thank the principals too that are at those particular sites, as they have been engaging in additional planning with Ms. Minor and others as they plan for this free, safe learning space. I think I've already mentioned it before, but just again highlighting that it is difficult with the staffing, but we are moving forward, and we thank those that have been helping with it. So that would be the return to school safely piece. And so at this point, I would ask Dr. Gallatin to come on for return to learning. Dr. Gallatin.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbach. President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and viewing guests. The next work team has been the return to school learning. And we asked some of our administrators to just give us some feedback for the first week and just the first couple of days this week. And you can see successes that were identified at high school was high engagement with students, good attendance, positive feedback from both teachers and parents, and I think we heard that earlier. And then also working with parents to support special education needs. Our K-8 teachers, or K-8 administrators, excuse me, just really identified that the device and material supplies distribution was really smooth, and that they really appreciated their parents coming and picking things up and just having that positive interaction with their community. Having DVOA attached with the K-8 school has helped also with students shifting enrollment and moving between those two programs, the on-campus virtual and the DVOA. And then, as was mentioned also before, our principals are embracing a problem-solving mindset through the unknown, and that's what we are living through right now. Even in any of the unique situations, whether it's come back to school safely, come back to work safely, come back to school with learning, all of that. Our administrators have just been rock stars in working with parents, calming their teachers, and embracing kids. Areas to improve, I don't think much of this is a surprise. Again, connectivity for kids, device differences, working on processes for devices or software needs, and how do we continue to support our parents and our teachers and our kids. Ensuring that students are logged into their DVUSD Google account to access Canvas documents. And a helpful tip for any of our parents that are listening is to always have your students log into the portal before they do anything else in the morning, and they can access all of their courses, their Canvas course and all of the other Dreambox and other devices, not devices, but programs that they use. We did find some principals have identified that teachers who were not able to personalize their course shells, and for some of us, as I've mentioned before, our K1, K1-2, this has been like a foreign language to them in learning, and a sharp learning curve that they have embraced, struggled with, and they learn right along with our kids. And then also that organization is important in those Canvas courses. Then, Gary, we also talked with some of our teachers, and some of the things that are very interesting is our high school have said that behavior management is almost non-existent which allows for instruction to reach each student individually without disruption. And the cool thing here that they have noted is that this unhindered delivery could prove to be a massive positive for distance learning in the future. Our K-8, of course, said it was great to spend time meeting their students and having that focus last week on social emotional and connecting with kids on their caseload and in their classrooms. They also mentioned having low behavior management concerns and the time that they have with kids can be spent on instruction and connecting with those students. They've identified that our students have attended Zoom meetings on time. They're prepared in a quiet environment. Many have their headphones, sit at a desk in a quiet area, and that they are adjusting their schedules to work through the school day. They also said a positive is that small group requirements really do help kids have a greater connection with the teacher and their peers in learning. We are in the midst of DIBELS testing, and that's for our K1, 2, 3 students. That was last week, this week, and going into next week. But for the grade levels that have already had DIBELS testing for reading gaps, teachers have identified K3 students who can be supported with Tier 2 and Tier 3 needs. And then another teacher said that she has all the resources she needs to help her students be successful and that the tech trainings have really been a help. And again, not surprising, device support. It's difficult to troubleshoot iPad issues without seeing them in person. That was from a high school teacher. Best practices for managing 2 hours of teaching. And I know that our teachers and our high school administrators continue to work on this, and that's with the block scheduling in our high schools. Navigating Canvas is pretty difficult for young kids. And some of our parents are having some tough times initially helping them with that. We know that with practice, we will all get better. Technology problems, as our board members mentioned earlier, tend to be the largest challenge. Sometimes mics are fuzzy, hard to help kids navigate when you are far away from them. Breaking each subject into its individual components can be confusing. There's lots of clicking, and I'll be addressing that later. There's a lot of communication with parents that has been necessary to ensure work gets completed and students are attending Zooms, and the amount of communication seems to, in some cases, be a challenge. And then how to make Canvas developmentally appropriate for our K1 students. I wanted to share with you just some information about Deer Valley Online Academy. There's been some talk about that. You can see where the enrollment currently is. K-8 has just under 3,200 students enrolled in the academy and 607 full-time high school students. With that comes staffing considerations, and when we come back in person, that is going to be a challenge that Jenna and HR and our campuses will have to work through. Our K-8 students are with their teachers in their home campus, and our teachers appreciate having all of their kids with them. The challenges, again, could be not having specific teachers assigned to just one DVOA teacher. So our students having one DVOA teacher. Because our K-8 students remained on their home campus, we did not need to surplus staff and potentially have larger class sizes in some grade levels. However, we know when we come back to in-person, there could be shifts in teachers as we consider the safest way to return to learning in person. All of our DVOA teachers have access to district-created course shells, and they're all aligned to our board-adopted resources and our district scope and sequence. And as has been mentioned before, it takes a great deal of time to build courses and to build them well. So we will continue that process going forward. And that several of our DVOA families are joining virtual for all Zoom meetings, and our teachers are so very excited about that. And I want to talk a little bit about that because there has been questions. The Zoom meetings are not required for our Deer Valley Online Academy students, although we sincerely believe and strongly recommend that at some point during the week, attending reading and math Zoom lessons will be beneficial, especially for our K2 students, as a support to their asynchronous learning. If you remember, one of our stakeholder parents had a student attend an online academy for a short period of time. And she mentioned that when her son attended an online school, they did have required areas to attend each day, like math. So our challenge is that we are working with our teachers, feeling a need to connect with all of their students in some manner, whether they are on-campus virtual or DVOA. Not having any interaction with the student is a huge shift in the teaching paradigm, especially when we have to determine if a student is actually learning content. It will be hard to make an accurate assessment as many parents help their children with assignments and possibly assessments. So truly knowing where a student's learning is will be tricky to say the least, and teachers feel that responsibility to ensure that learning is occurring. And that's why they have encouraged parents to attend Zoom meetings. However, in the current situation we find ourselves in and the constraints some of our parents have, we know asynchronous learning may be the only way to work through instruction right now until we can come back to in-person learning. So I want to address some questions that were forwarded to Dr. Finch this week, and one of them had to do with attendance. These guidelines, and I'm addressing right now on-campus virtual learning for high school and for K-8. The guidelines were created by the Return to Learning team, which was made up of campus administrators, teachers, and departments. So this was a large team of over 30 individuals who came together throughout the summer to make decisions about our return to learning. This slide shows information shared with campus administrators regarding attendance for on-campus virtual students. There has been some questions about cameras, and that kind of bubbled up. Really, yesterday was the first that we heard a whole lot about it. So I want to address that specifically. For both high school and K-8, you will see where it says in high school, students must have their camera on for attendance purposes, and in K-8, it says students need to have their camera on for attendance purposes. First of all, there's no legal direction about cameras that we have been able to find, and we really didn't consider legal guidance on that until questions started coming up yesterday. The actual reason that was put in for both was our campus level team members felt very strongly that they wanted to see their students for the portion of time that they were together. Now, I know that we've had parents who have said why and what's the need. So what I'd like to do is to take this question back to our Return to Learning team to address and seek feedback from our stakeholder committee that is made up of parents and committee members. Plus, we have the concern that was brought to us from the board, and then a couple of emails from parents. Just know that there was nothing ill intent meant here. It was that our teachers really just wanted to see their kids to ensure attendance. And I think this has something to do with our home learning last spring and potentially not being able to know if kids were participating or not. But again, we'll take this back to the Return to Learning team for further discussion. The next one is specific. Gary, we can go to the next one. The next one is specific to the Deer Valley Online Academy. So here you can see that for our high school, our full-time high school students, and even our students who are part-time Deer Valley Online Learning Program, they use My Hours. It's an app within our program each week to log their time spent in each course. And for an AOI, an Arizona Online Institution, we have specific numbers of hours each week that students are supposed to be involved in their content. So that is how we address attendance in high school through My Hours. Now with K-8 being on their home campus, we had to make some decisions on how would we be able to do that for our families that have their students completely asynchronous. And this is what the team decided. Our teachers do not mark their DVOA students as absent in Power School during the week. They are just, we consider them present Monday through Friday. Our Parents, our DVOA parents will receive a communication on Friday with a attestation link. And they'll receive that from our Shelley Schubert, our principal, or her designee. But I bolded the bullet that is most important. Our parents then would complete the attestation form by Monday morning at 8 a.m. And the way that the examples that we've been given from ADE is this is for them to document student time spent on education activities, which includes submission of assigned tasks from the previous week of learning. That's going to be one of the most important things that our DVOA parents submits to Shelley Schubert and her team. Our DVOA registrar will cross-reference that form with the list of students from every campus. If parents don't submit by Monday at 8, they will receive a phone call reminder from the DVOA registrar. If a parent has not submitted that attestation by Tuesday at 8, then DVOA registrar will contact the campus registrar, and that campus registrar will mark the DVOA student absent for the previous 5 days. Remember, the attestation is our only documentation from a parent that their child spent the required amount of time in those education activities and submitted those assignments from the teacher. So that is the attendance for Deer Valley Online Academy at high school and at K-8.
And I would just add, Dr. Gallion and President Ordway, that the attestation form, it is very user-friendly for the board. It only takes, what would you say, Gail? Under 30 seconds, probably.
Under 30 seconds.
The document, so very user-friendly for our parents.
Yep, absolutely. I wanted to share with you here on the next slide that on July 31st in the parent update, this information was in there, and it was specifically about our attendance. So I just wanted to remind you and our parents who are watching that that went out before the school year started on August 3rd, that previous Friday. And if you go to the next one, Gary. And this one just, again, was shared in that same letter update that went out. And this is just the responsibility that we have and that parents have to attend school and be provided instruction. And if you'll go to the next one. So another set of questions that the board members sent were around expectations for learning. So again, this was a return to learning team task. And I would say that the team worked tirelessly on these expectations with input from our stakeholder committee members, principals, and other parents. This was probably one of our most challenging tasks as a team that we worked on before school started. So I'm going to start on the left with our high school. High school shifted to a block schedule with 3 periods on day A and the remaining periods on day B. Periods are 2 hours long. And as you heard, there are some challenges. Some of our teachers still need some support with that. But I wanted to share with you the actual schedule that the team, in working together with our high school administrators, determined that there would be 20 to 45 minutes of synchronous whole group instruction to start that 2-hour period, then about 45 minutes to 60 minutes of asynchronous work, independent or collaborative, but then teachers could also be pulling small groups and small groups of kids who either need enhancement for learning gaps or enrichment to continue to push them. And then coming back together as a whole group for about 20 to 45 minutes at the end of the period. Now, our teachers may or may not, our parents and kids may or may not be experiencing that everywhere, but that is the expectation that was set by the team members, and those team members were pretty much our high school administrators and with some teachers. Now I'll move over to the K-6 self-contained. We looked at K-8 a bit differently and broke those grade levels into 3 categories. So we have the K-6 self-contained classrooms, and eventually we'll get to the next slide where we look at 4-8 departmentalized classrooms and 7-8 classrooms on a block schedule for our true middle schools. So I'm going to start here with K-6. What you see here are the expectations for K-6 self-contained classrooms. And for our parents that may be listening in and might not know what that means, That is simply that a single teacher teaches all of the contents, ELA, reading, math, science, social studies, across the day. So a student would have one content level teacher who teaches all those contents. You will note the synchronous expectations for whole group and small group instruction here. Schools had the flexibility to determine if their master schedule would mirror their brick and mortar schedule, so that when students came back to in-person school, they would have their daily schedule routine down. However, schools could also choose to group their class lesson Zoom meetings in the morning and have asynchronous learning mostly in the afternoon. Our return to learning team was not able to reach consensus on which schedule was best. So schools were given the autonomy to make that decision as long as the expectations for synchronous instruction were met. It is also interesting to note that our stakeholder committee of parents and community members were also split on the topic of schedules, with the schedule through the day having slightly more parents and community members on that team saying that's how we would want, but then the others said we would really like to cluster those Zoom meetings in the morning. If you take a look, we've built in both whole group, small group instruction for English language arts and math. We've said that ELA reading is required for all students daily, 15 to 20 minutes minimum, and math is required for all students at a minimum once a week. And we know that math is probably one of our areas that our kids are going to have the most gaps in. So we would encourage that our kids be able to participate in that more often. We do say that whole group instruction at least once per week for science, social studies, and direct instruction are integrated into ELA, and math is another way. And I know for many of our primary teachers, they are integrating science and social studies into reading. I'll talk about special areas in a minute, Gary, if you'll go to the next one. Here you will see the class expectations for our 4th through 8th grade departmentalized teachers. And what this means is simply that I am a teacher and all I teach all day are English language arts classes, or I teach only math classes. That's our departmentalized classes. And then on the right, you can see this is for our grades 7, 8 in a true middle school that are running with a block schedule similar to high school. So they have a 2-hour block. For our departmentalized and our 7, 8 blocks, we start out with whole group meetings for about 15 to 20 minutes. That's that check-in, that's the layout, what is the class going to complete, and then 20 to 30 minutes of instruction in each of those periods. And then small group instruction each day for 15 to 20 minutes, ensuring that our students receive small group instruction at least once per week per period. And that just means that a teacher pulls anywhere from 3 to 5 to 6 kids to be able to work with them. You can see in the true middle school with the block schedule, it's very similar to what we saw in high school. And it's just whole group with small group instruction and then coming back together with whole group for a daily check-in. All 3 of those schedules looked at our special areas fairly similarly. So what we wanted to look at here was to say that our schools would use their own campus schedules to determine what time of day specials would be conducted. So for example, some of our schools have specials only in the afternoon, and some of our schools have specials that flow throughout the day depending on the grade level. Again, that was a choice that a campus could make. However, the caveat here is that our special area teachers must be available to meet live with their students in each grade level at least once a week, according to the needs of the school site's master schedule. And so that is, again, that connection for our kids, because we know that for some children, having specials is probably one of the most important reasons that they enjoy school. So that I think addresses what are the expectations for our campuses. There were some specific areas that we asked our campuses to make sure that they followed and built into their school schedules. Okay. So then here is another area that we had board questions, and this has been addressed earlier in the board reports. So first of all, I want to thank all of our parents who have started the year off with us and are doing their best to ensure that their children participate and learn with their teacher and through their grade level courses each day. It's not easy, and we know it's not. I also need to apologize for the ups and downs over the past week and into this week with technology, with some of our courses, assignments, and tasks that many times having kids take a picture and upload it in first grade, that just does not make sense. And I will assure you that we will improve, and we are improving. So these were additional board questions around instruction, courses, technology, and mandates. And I want to address them just individually. Developmentally, it is not appropriate for young children, specifically K1, to be sitting and learning for more than generally 10 to 15 minutes at a time. At this point in the school year, when we just start school, our kindergarten and first grade kids are so young and so new, they need so much direction, as parents, you know, and are aware. We know that students will build stamina and be able to attend longer periods as the year goes on, but in any primary classroom, the activities change at this rate at the beginning of the school year. Just, we know they can't sit long enough, although we are making them. Additionally, there is very little meaningful learning that can happen when there are 20 or more primary students in a large whole group lesson at one time. We know that we can provide, here is what we're going to be doing, here is what the morning is going to look like, but to give actual instruction for 20 to 26 kids is very difficult. They need direct interaction and strong scaffolding to stay engaged and acquire skills needed for success. We found this in our Jumpstart intervention program this summer, that small group instruction is so effective. So we want to encourage, and you saw that built into the schedule, so that small group instruction was the most important part of the day built in. However, I know that there have been students last week and this week who are on screen for multiple hours. That is not our intent, and that is not what we would want to have for our youngest learners. We will get better at navigating the technology. Our kids will get better. Our course structures are improving, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. And teaching online it will get better too. Our teachers will become more comfortable. So Dean, if you would click on that sample to-do list. So what I wanted to show you is this is one of the best practice documents shared with administrators last week. And Dean, if you'll just scroll down. For teachers to begin to integrate with their kids and parents. Assignments that require a submission are in bold. While the number of assignments in math and ELA seem numerous, they were specifically scaffolded down so students focus on one skill at a time and then move on to the next step, to chunk the material rather than putting all content for a 45-minute lesson. However, I know that some of our parents and some of our teachers have struggled with that. The majority of the assignments require students to watch a short video, generally around 8 minutes, prompt them to talk to a peer or a family member about what they have read or learned, and then mark the assignment as done with no submission required, although it looks like there is a lot. And on this, you can see in the reading section, it says task, task, view, task. And we're working to get that consistent across all of our courses. You can see in bold where in math it says day one, exit ticket, submission. That's something that a parent would know immediately that this is something that will need to be submitted. Dean, if you'll go back. In addition, I wanted to share a sample class schedule. This is also a best practice document that we shared with our administrators last week to begin to share out with their Canvas courses and parents. And one of the things that we've asked our younger grade level teachers to do is to also include that visual cue so that for reading, if a parent were not immediately there, a student would know that this is something that I'm going to do that's part of reading. We know that many teachers are already working on these best practice documents and communicating them out to their families or will be. The goal is for this to become a weekly practice and a communication tool for teachers to parents and students across our schools. And if you go back to the presentation, Dean. Thank you. We are working diligently to create a cross-check of content and workload both within and across our grade levels. The timelines and magnitude of starting the course build process prevented this from happening in the first rollout of course content. That was last week, this week, and next week. We are improving our processes for the next rollout of course content. For example, for next week, we are streamlining and decreasing posted assignments in English language arts. For week 4 and thereafter, you will see significant improvement as the assignments and tasks will really only address essential skills and be focused and purposeful rather than only added practice. Our challenge has been finding balance for academic rigor at all grade levels, trying to do what we do in a brick and mortar classroom. And you know what? We have found that that is not possible in an online environment. We have to just get to the essentials. In addition, we have had conflicting parent emails and requests that we are not challenging their child already this year. And why are we doing home learning from spring again? And then, as you have heard, we've had other parents who have said this is too much and not possible. We also know that the tech challenges may be hindering in some cases rather than the actual assignments and curriculum work. With that said, on-campus virtual and Deer Valley Online Academy students should have relatively similar workloads and modules when it comes to their instruction for each content area, grade, and at each school. As I have mentioned, we will improve all courses moving forward. That is our goal. Deer Valley is known as a continuous improvement district, and that is what we do. We continually work to improve. I would address something that Ms. Tweedy said. If a student is experiencing excessive work and cannot keep up, please reach out to your teacher, just as you would do in a typical school year. There is no difference. Our teachers want our kids to be successful, and they will work with you. I want to thank all of the parents who have reached out to us with constructive feedback and have helped us adjust as we continue to build courses. We've had some parents who work in universities and others who have built their own Canvas courses, who have given us some suggestions and ideas. And I just say that that feedback has been valuable and it is absolutely making a difference for us. So we appreciate our parents who have sent us constructive feedback. We strongly believe that teachers need to personalize their courses and modules just as they would do in their classroom for in-person instruction. This takes time and experience, and we know that distance learning is new for all of our primary people and our intermediate teachers at 4th through 6th grade. It's hard to do in an online environment, and it takes time. A teacher can remove and or add lessons if he or she feels it's necessary for the learning progression that day or week to be delivered through the live Zoom, instead of just only assigning it asynchronously. As I've mentioned, we will be decreasing the assignment specifically in English language arts moving forward, but still maintaining rigor. I think we heard from both Ms. Frank and Ms. Reed that it's not necessarily the curriculum, it's the tech challenges. And so we will be looking at how can we reduce the load of tech right now until our kids are definitely more experienced. Our teachers can choose to add their own assignments if needed. Lessons are recorded and posted no later than the next day for asynchronous students to access and complete. We've also been asked by some parents why we cannot have the spring home learning that we experienced in April and May instead of our current learning model. We intentionally identified in the return to learning team what was needed for students entering a new grade level with new content and determined that last spring would not give us a consistent structure for instruction and learning across our 39 schools, especially when we know that kids could be moving back and forth between on-campus virtual, Deer Valley Online Academy, and potentially in-person instruction. We know that our teachers in the younger grades really do understand their students, and all of our babies in kinder and first grade have a difficult time sitting still in a chair in their classrooms. So we know that that's difficult for our parents at home. We know that it's hard to have them complete tasks without significant support and direction. which is also true for our Zoom lessons as well. When a teacher has that many kids in front of them, being able to direct a single student or a group of students is more difficult than it is in small group lessons. We know that our older students, as we also heard from Ms. Reed, may be much more successful with longer periods in a Zoom lesson. However, it doesn't matter what the grade level is. We know that instruction with a smaller group of students tends to be more effective at any grade level, whether it is virtual or in person. And that is why you see and saw in those schedules the information that small group instruction is a huge part of our distance learning. I ask that each of us show grace and patience with each other as everyone is experiencing new learning, including me. These challenges will be resolved. I guarantee they will, but it will take a week or two. We will improve, and I would ask our parents to help us get through this week. Next week will be better, and the following week, which would be week 4, I believe you will see a vast improvement in the challenges that you've been experiencing. For the last topic, which is perceived district mandates, we provide guidance based on developmental considerations of children, considerations of a guaranteed and viable curriculum, considerations of our parents, especially now in a distance learning environment, and our students and our teachers, and the sharp learning curve that our teachers are on. The sample list the to-do list and the class schedules that you saw are best practices for working in an online environment. As I said, we shared both documents with our campus administrators to share with their teachers. In some cases, teachers may think this is a district mandate, and although we strongly recommend schools and teachers using these 2 structures, they are simply best practices at this point. They should help our parents be more successful. You will see in this next document for communication best practices, and Dean, if you'll click on that one. This is another document, best practices document shared with our campus administrators also last week to support challenges parents were expressing with too much communication coming home, changes in the daily schedule each day without parents knowing about those changes, and also publishing course content. And again, this is a best practice document that we share out and would highly recommend, strongly recommend that our administrators and teachers read through them and try and move in that direction. These are best practices from many other folks that are far more versed in online content than all of us are. Another example, and Dean, if you'll go back, another example that may be considered a district mandate could be the essential teacher agreement for distance learning. We had a similar document last spring for home learning in April and May. So we all knew then exactly what was the expectations for school closure in the spring. The Return to Learning team created a similar document for distance learning this fall. This was shared with our campus administrators before the school year began, as well as our teachers before the school year began. So Dean, if you'll click on the essential teacher agreement. And again, hold tight, we'll get there. What this particular document did was really just spell out what are our learning platforms, what are communication expectations, what would we expect to see for grading and assessment, what are our expectations for distance learning in a virtual environment. And we're not going to be able to get that right now, but I'd be happy to share that with you at a later time, so I apologize. So all of those are really best practice documents, and I'm not sure where the question came from the board member about perceived district mandates. I can say that there really has been only one that I personally have given, and that is that our parents absolutely had to have the consumable resources for math and for reading that were supposed to go home in the supply pickup that our schools had. That's the only thing that I have directly said, you will get those resources home to parents. The rest of these things really have been best practices and strong recommendations and expectations. And we can go to the next slide. We are working hard to provide teachers and administrators with support in the transition to Canvas as our learning management system K-12. We have live learning training before the school year began, as well as on-demand trainings in our technology hub. The weekend before school started, we had our math CISs who gave up of their time both Saturday and Sunday to provide all-day tech support for any teacher who joined them in preparation for that first day of instruction. This past weekend, we offered tech support Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday, and all day Monday. There was a mix this past weekend of trends that we saw, more about setting up and using Power Teacher Pro with Canvas as teachers are beginning to record grades. Some of the questions that have come up were simple things like publishing content and editing assignment settings, and others are about some unique details for managing their Canvas course. In addition, we have created both teacher and student tech tip sheets, which we've been told are helpful to share how students interact with Canvas and their devices. The quote you see here was sent to Michelle Coots, our most awesome technology guru and specialist. I cannot express my gratitude to Michelle, as she has pretty much single-handedly ensured we were ready to start this school year with technology integration and instructional technology. This DV star that you see here is just one of many recognitions she has received. Speaking about Michelle, she and Kathy White, Director of Academics and Assessment, led the Parent Tech Support webinar last Wednesday evening, where Michelle and Kathy showcased the Parent Technology Hub on the district website and other troubleshooting tips. We had about 1,100 viewers that evening, and those views have quadrupled to just under 4,400 views. And we appreciate our parents and teachers who may have chosen to take a look at that webinar, because I believe it has helped them know where resources are available. A shout out goes to Jeff Anderson, Kathy White, and the IS&T team for supporting the device distribution for K-8 schools. In total, Deer Valley has 28,870 devices out to Deer Valley students. Although there are some challenges, as we have heard, we are grateful to the Deer Valley community for supporting the bond election last November, which allowed us to move to a one-to-one device in all grade levels this school year, quicker than we had planned. You will note we have deployed 60 hotspots with others in process right now, and 11 of our families have been able to use the Cox Connect program for internet services. And as soon as a parent reaches out, Kathy is on top of that and working to get them a hotspot, or to see if that Cox Connect program will work for them. We are doing our best to make sure our kids have that connectivity. We do know that connectivity is a challenge for a parent who may have 4 children at home, and one device or their Wi-Fi load struggles with that many, and we completely understand that. I know there was a question, and I forgot to mention this back in the attendance, about what happens when a child has technology issues, whether it's at the elementary level, middle level, or high school. And the attendance expectations that we have shared is that our teachers will be cognizant and compassionate when that happens. If it continues to happen 2 or 3 times, that then they refer that information to their campus administrator so that we can help support either the connectivity issues or the device, so that they are not marked absent when it is a technology challenge. In addition, I'm back to this slide. To teacher support with technology, we have worked through just under 1,100 tech help tickets from parents through the home learning helpline. Kathy White has taken on the lion's share of those 1,100 responses, with some support from Jeff and his team. But most of it has been on her own, and all of the follow-up responses. Kathy is another superstar I want to thank for her calm support and working into the wee hours of the morning, 2 and 3 a.m. in the morning, all through last week and this weekend, just to try and stay ahead of and support our parent technology needs in each of those submissions. Over the past week, you can see what the top trends have been from our parents. Jeff, along with IS&T, Michelle and Kathy are working to find solutions, and when needed, those workarounds until we can find and fix those tech challenges. So this is my last slide. I don't want to leave you all with the idea that everything is a challenge and not working. We have had many successes in parent emails and communications that share how happy their child or their children are to be with their teacher, meet new friends, and start learning new content. And many of them are learning new tech skills, even in kindergarten. Our education system will not ever be the same again. When we are able to come back to in-person learning, we know that our experiences here will change how we teach in our brick and mortar classrooms. Our students will have learned skills that we probably would not have ever thought them capable of during any previous time before this. It is amazing that when we give our children, our students, the opportunity to be challenged in new ways, that they rise to those challenges and surpass our expectations. I want to ensure the board, and I want to ensure our parents, that the struggles that we are facing last week and this week, not across every school, not across every grade level, will be improved and addressed and fixed. I would encourage parents to continue to reach out to our board members, but to reach out to me or others with feedback on how we can continue to improve. Again, our teachers are amazing, and there is no fault in any of our teachers. They want to teach, they want to love on their students, and they want to help them learn. Our teachers are truly gifts to us during this time because they are learning just as quickly as our students are. So I praise them and give them kudos for all they are doing right now for our students. So with that, that's the end of my section. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. Okay, I'll jump in briefly here. So regarding our in-person services for students with special needs, as we have talked about a little bit in the presentation, there was an edict from State Superintendent Hoffman regarding the need for schools to provide some in-person services for students with special needs that cannot access the curriculum in a distance learning environment. And so I do want to make sure the board knows that we are aware of that. Dr. McCusker and her team have been working truly around the clock as this edict has provided little to basically no time in terms of preparation to make this happen. And so right now, Dr. McCusker has a phase-in approach that she has been working with multiple departments with in our district, and also having meetings with our principals and discussing how this may roll out. We will continue with more meetings this week. We have one tomorrow in the morning with our principals. And so that is something that you will hear much more about in the board update on Friday. And with that, I will ask Ms. Jenna Moffitt to come on for Work Safely.
Good evening, everybody. This evening, I'm going to be going over our annual opening in a virtual environment, provide you some updates on our site work plans. I'll review a few of our fall staffing needs and provide you some updates on our COVID-19 supports. The HR Teacher Mentoring Department held a 3-day new to the profession virtual training for 108 new to the profession certificated staff. Though the virtual format was new to the team, they were able to engage in this exciting new crew through learning activities focused on first days with students. Teachers were provided the opportunity to review Canvas and Zoom. The CIAS team facilitated a review of curriculum focused on individual content needs, and the special education department provided an overview of the special education and 504 requirements. The mentors report that though the format was virtual, they were still able to establish positive new relationships with the new to the profession members and have continued to meet one-on-one with new teachers throughout these last 2 weeks. And as you can imagine, in this new environment, they have appreciated that support. 2 half-day virtual orientations were scheduled for all new certified staff members on July 24th. This virtual opportunity was organized to onboard employees to DVUSD. Participants reviewed the DVUSD strategic plan, mission, vision, and core values. Cabinet members joined the meeting for introductions and a review of department supports. Time was also offered to DVEA President Harley Kilman as he and his team shared their support and advocacy structure to all certified staff. Both events received positive feedback, and the planning team has already identified that they will continue some of these types of new components into future opportunities. We also want to share a huge shout out to the CIA team as they rallied to provide additional development and support to all of our new teachers. Our principal teams, teachers stepped up for one another to help one another on board with Canvas. Also, Michelle Coots and Christy Hirschberg worked tirelessly and continue to work tirelessly to make sure that all of our online teachers are prepared, as well as our teachers teaching brick and mortar online. IS&T, we'd also like to celebrate them for all the things that they did to make sure that all of our new teachers had the technology necessary to begin their year. And also want to thank Harley Kilman and his team for all that they have done to step up and try and rally around our teachers as they have learned new things to upstart this 2021 year. So if you recall, we've gone over the site work plans a few times with the governing board, but it's important to mention that we continue to revise them based on the reality that we are in. And right now we're working under a new executive order that allows for us to reintroduce the third component you see on the slide, and that's the on-call component. This was absent over the summer months and now has returned. So what all of our supervisors do have to do is take a look at the organizational need, balance that with the preservation of the workforce and their individual needs. This is not an easy task, and our supervisors are working very hard managing work plans every single day. So on-site options could include an employee that has been asked to work on job-specific tasks at the work location, on-site work location. It could also include that the supervisor requested the employee work on-site to complete other types of job functions. So for example, a bus driver who would be asked to report to transportation, to do things for Mr. Meza and his crew may instead be asked to report to one of our schools that is offering free learning to perform a supervisory function. Work from home options also have those two descriptions, but instead the work location is at home. So someone could be asked to work from home to complete functions that align with their job, or work from home to complete functions that align with a different type of job. And third, when the other two cannot be performed, a third option can be invoked, and that is the on-call option. We do have parameters around on-call options that we did not have in the spring. That includes minimum work expectations weekly, as well as minimum contact expectations with the supervisor and the employee more than just a weekly basis. On-call could be mixed with the other type of work requirements. For example, a paraprofessional may be utilized the majority of their day, but perhaps is on call for an hour of their day. All classified employees are expected to complete their time logs on a daily basis. If they are at work on site, they clock in, and if they're working from home, they complete their work logs and submit those to their Kronos editors. Pardon me for 1 minute or second. Staffing needs. So far this fall, the balancing of staffing needs, we have, as the board is aware, we take the first 10 days and we look at enrollment and we identify where we are over enrolled and where we are under enrolled. Because of all of the some foreseen and some unforeseen challenges that we are going to be facing as we move forward, we wanted to make as few changes as possible in order to provide consistency for teachers and consistency for students. You know that that's true because we asked you to adopt an MOU that assisted us in doing that. And as the board knows, we moved our online students back to their base campuses to decrease the need to move staffing around. That didn't prevent, though, us from needing to adjust some. And if you recall, I shared with you in the update last Friday that we did have a need to move around 5 certificated staff members, specifically teachers, to sites where we were over enrolled and needed to add a section, or to sites where we had vacancies. All of those vacancies are now covered, and this week all of those teachers started in their at their new locations. We also prepared over 57 substitutes who have been trained online, again, thanks to Michelle Coots. And those substitutes are currently supporting out across all of our campuses. We also are working with other departments in evaluating our needs and allocating staff members for programs such as those you see here, free, safe learning spaces, currently Staycation. So we are working to support more heavily at those locations, specifically for kindergarten students and first grade students who need more one-on-one support, or at least a 1-to-2 ratio of support as they learn how to access the curriculum online. Additionally, as you learned from Gary, we are working with Melissa McCusker for her rollout plan for in-person special education services. Our first location is Vista Peak, and we're working with Brian Feinberg and his staff in being prepared to open for next Monday. These take time, as Gary indicated, managing each specific, identifying which staff members you're going to need, the needs of the students, the legal requirements around the specific request, the safety needs at that location, meeting with staff and reassuring them of these safety precautions, and then rolling out the processes for allocating staff to these locations, again, does take time, but we are working as quickly as we can. And I believe Dr. McCusker will be sharing in the future a rollout plan based not only on what the students need, but our capacity to get staff to those locations. We also have opened a Google job board for these types of functions so that, for example, Mr. Meza has a place to go where he can see what maybe Barb Irvin needs at her worksite locations and the amount of staff that she needs and what those staff members would be doing at those work sites. So again, this is just to have a resource for all of our leaders across the system to look at opportunities for their staff members as they're trying to find work, either working from home or on site to fill their days. And then lastly, some of the things that we have done to update our supports around COVID. We continue to update our employee portal page to make it easier for all of our employees. We update all the pages in there. Gary mentioned that some of our protocols around how we respond to employees who have COVID and the amount of time that they are required to be away from work has changed. So we have updated all of our documents to reflect that. We also are working with Monica and her team to provide, to organize our portal page to make it a little bit easier to access, as well as an immediate quick link for someone that would need to report COVID. The second bullet there, you'll see that we are going to phase off of staff coronavirus info, and we are moving this week. We will be launching covidreport.dvusd.org, and this is for the purpose of efficiencies. We know that staff coronavirus info did support us well through the summer months, but found that it wasn't the most efficient way to gather information from our staff. So this will help us do that. The other thing that this will help us do is interface with ALS more easily as we prepare to return to brick and mortar. And as we design and learn the ways that we're going to need to respond when all students come back, this again will be a tool that will better meet our needs. And then we are working with Monica again, third bullet, she's going to be including helpful information for our employees each time she sends out an issue of the DV Voice.
Thank you, Ms. And with that, Ms. Frank, I believe Ms. Ordway had to leave.
She did, so I will be, as vice president, taking her place for the rest of the meeting. So I'll just do the round robin that we've done before and go to each board member and see if you have questions that you'd like to ask at this time. So we'll begin with Mrs. O'Brien.
Actually, Mrs. Frank, I was wondering if we could come back to the questions regarding this report, because I know that we have City of Phoenix staff for an agenda item that comes later. So could we conduct our business, that is our consent agenda, and that preview item, and then come back to our questions and answers on our COVID report so that those city staff members might be able to leave our meeting?
I don't have any objection. Do other board members have an objection?
I don't have an objection. I agree.
Ms. Tweedy?
They got to stay with us. No, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So we'll just move through the agenda to the preview item and then come back for the questions and answers for the COVID report at the end of the meeting. So public comments have been suspended for this meeting. Dr. Finch, did you receive any that needed to be read?
Nope.
Okay, so moving on to consent agenda. If there's no objection from board members, I'll just read the motions. Item 4, I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 4A through 4L.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Were there any nays? I don't hear any nays. I don't see the vote popping up on my iPad, though.
I didn't either, so.
It's not, I don't have it either.
Okay, well, I didn't hear any nays, so it passed 4 ayes to 4 to 0. All right, so we'll move on to action item 5A. Let me bring that up. Approve the addenda pre-approvals. And I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented. Is there any, second. I need a second.
I second.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries 4-0. We'll move to action item 5B, the Spanish immersion curriculum adoption. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation for the K-6 Spanish immersion curricular resource adoption. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Dr. Galligan, did you have information to present to us on this?
Ms. Frank and board members, Dr. Finch, This was information that was shared in the Friday update this past Friday. If you would like to see the presentation again, we can pull it up.
Does anyone feel they need to see? I'm seeing everyone shaking their head no. Does anyone have any questions? Again, it appears none, so I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 4-0. And again, I'm not seeing the votes pop up, but I'm assuming they're being recorded. So that brings us to our preview item, 6A.
Vice President Ms. Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we have three individuals from the city of Phoenix on the line. I wanted to introduce Ms. Christine McKay. She's the Director of Community and Economic Development, and they have an opportunity to share with us. And for those that have been on the board for some time, Ms. McKay that name may be familiar. Back in 2018, we also considered a foreign trade zone agreement for the Honeywell property right up the street here on 19th Avenue in Deer Valley. And we did approve that one as well. This is similar in nature, but maybe larger in scale. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Thank you for your patience as we work through our other board agenda items.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much for having us here this evening. Good evening again. I'm Chris Mackey, as was said, the Director of Community and Economic Development here for the City of Phoenix. With me here is Chris Camacho, who is the President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, and Alan Stevenson, the Planning Director for the City of Phoenix. Good evening, Vice President Frank and members of the board. Thank you so much for allowing us to visit with you for a little while this evening. And very good memory, the Honeywell project that you so thoughtfully approved to move forward for a foreign trade zone for Phoenix. I will share with you that they have added the investment and they have added the jobs that we talked about, 700 new jobs for Deer Valley on the high wage side. So I thank you for all of your work that you did to help us expand that great company. And that's what we're here for you this evening, is to chat with you about another potential project for Deer Valley. If I could ask if the slides that we have could come up, and I'll move through the presentation rather quickly in the interest of you getting back to your questions and answers and so graciously allowing us to move forward. So a number of you follow the Wall Street Journal and other publications, and earlier this year, a Taiwanese company announced that it had selected Phoenix for a U.S. expansion. We're here today to talk to you about the opportunities with this expansion, but also want to be very careful to share with you, they have not selected their site in Phoenix yet. They are looking at multiple sites in the city of Phoenix, and we'll visit with you about that now. So TSMC is a Taiwanese, the name of the company is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. It's based out of Hsinchu, Taiwan. Earlier this year, it did announce it would construct an advanced semiconductor manufacturing fab here in Phoenix. It will produce 5 nanometer technology. And what that means is, if you think of Moore's Law, it was double speed and half the size every 18 months. They have reached a size and scale of technology that no other company in the world has been able to reach yet in producing for technology for, as you've had your wonderful discussion this evening about online learning for our kiddos and how we move them forward. These are the chips that belong in the computers. They belong in their smart devices, in their tablets, in our refrigerators, in our thermostats. You know, there are a wide range of chips. This will bring with it 1,600 to 1,800 high-tech direct jobs that would work for TSMC. But more importantly, and even as important, thousands of indirect jobs in the semiconductor ecosystem. What I mean by that is, for every semiconductor job that's created, approximately 4 other jobs are created in the market to support those jobs. So if you think of office, for every 1 job, it's about 1.75 jobs are created. For traditional manufacturing, it's somewhere around 2. But as you remember with Honeywell, those high wage jobs, those high skilled jobs are anywhere between 4 and 6. So we estimate 4 on the low side. Construction is planned to start in early 21 with a wafer targeted production of 24. This project is a total of $12 billion in capital investment in the first phase. Next slide, please. Just to share with you, because most people don't know TSMC, they are the world's second largest semiconductor manufacturing company by market cap as of early this year. Samsung is number one. Intel, which we know very dearly, our wonderful Chandler-based company, is number 3. Texas Instruments number 7, and Qualcomm number 8. This is an incredibly large semiconductor manufacturing company. Next slide, please. They have, as I said, the mayor and I spent a significant amount of time with Chris Camacho in Taiwan last year, working with this company over the last 5 years. It was a national search, and we were very fortunate that we put together a program that encouraged them to select the city of Phoenix. This is not the region of Phoenix. The city of Phoenix has been selected. They have narrowed down to several sites across the city, and several of those sites are in the Deer Valley Unified School District. They will make an announcement of their site later this year, most likely here in November, and we'll be very excited to share that announcement with you. Their operations do require a foreign trade zone. As you'll recall from Honeywell, and I'll walk through it a little bit more on the next slide, a foreign trade zone is a designation by the Federal Foreign Trade Zone Board under the U.S. Department of Commerce. Next slide. So a foreign trade zone it really allows for companies that have special customs procedures, how they're used, and designate to facilitate the ease of international commerce. So examples of manufacturing facilities here in Arizona that have a foreign trade zone are both Honeywell and Intel. So they bring a raw material into the zone, they add value to the zone, add value to the material, and they ship it out of the zone. It goes out duty free until the product is sold, and then they pay taxes on that product. In Arizona, back in 1991, in order to recruit these significant advanced manufacturing type companies, a state statute was created to really narrow our attraction of a complement for foreign trade zones. So our class 1 property tax assessment ratio is 18%. And we see commercial projects at that level and industrial projects at that level. In a foreign trade zone, if you are a manufacturing facility, a 5% assessed valuation or a class 6 can be applied to these projects with approval. The reason that was done was really to attract those knowledge intensive, high wage jobs and high capital intensive jobs into Arizona. So when we have advanced manufacturing projects that have costly, sophisticated build outs that require the latest equipment and have a bona fide reason for a foreign trade zone, it's a really useful tool in bringing those companies in and having them select Arizona. So as part of that process, we do come to each of the taxing jurisdictions and ask for a letter of no objection from the taxing jurisdiction to include with our foreign trade zone application as we move forward. And those letters of no objection include all the school districts, Maricopa Community Colleges, the City of Phoenix, the Central Arizona Project, Maricopa County, the State of Arizona, Maricopa Integrated Health Systems, West MEC, and the Fire, Library, and Flood Control District. So we do get them from, or request them from all of the taxing jurisdictions. Next slide, please. As we look at why we do this in foreign trade zones on these high capital investment projects, what I did for your review is I did an analysis comparing TSMC's $12 billion investment operating with a foreign trade zone at their 5% assessed valuation, and we estimated the property tax that the Deer Valley School District will collect over a 10-year period of time. And then we used the same amount of property and built it out as a very sophisticated industrial office and corporate commerce park, and applied it at an 18% assessed valuation. And you can see the properties that they are considering in Deer Valley today currently pay zero to any taxing jurisdictions in property tax. TSMC with a foreign trade zone assessment would pay approximately $55.6 million to Deer Valley School District every 10 years. And of course, that goes up at an increase on values as those years go on. If we built out the same corporate commerce park of the same size, the Deer Valley on 18% assessed valuation or full ad valorem property tax, the school district would see about $26 million in property tax from the project. So you can see those high capital investment, advanced manufacturing projects bring a tremendous benefit in a mutually beneficial solution between industry and taxing jurisdictions. Next slide, please. If we look at just the economic impact to the city of Phoenix, not including the county, not including the state, but over a 20-year total, the economic output just to the city of Phoenix would be $16.1 billion. And that was a third-party economic impact analysis that was completed. I also think it's important to be very clear when we're analyzing property tax for a semiconductor facility, we're only using the tax dollars that are the value that is created off of the core and shell of the building. In the federal, on federal tax rolls and on state tax rolls, semiconductor manufacturing equipment is already tax exempt. So when we're comparing that $55 billion or $55 million for me, I wish it was billion, $55 million for you, that is on the $2 billion of the core and shell of the building. So we really are comparing apples and apples with the Commerce Park. Next slide, please. As we look at partnerships that these advanced industries can bring, and Dr. Finch did share with me, as you may or may not know, I was Chandler's economic developer for about 16 years. So working with Intel and working with Microchip and Freescale and other semiconductor facilities, saw those strategic partnerships those companies created with the school district. So some of those benefits, besides the financial benefit that comes along with these companies, are creating STEM academies with our schools and guest lecturing, teacher training and internships with the company. It really gives the teachers street cred with their students when they can say they wore a bunny suit for the summer and did semiconductor manufacturing, and it really helps to advance our students. Curriculum connections, ensuring our students are those employees that are considered for these jobs in the futures, and creating those future workforce and employment opportunities for our students. So what I meant to share with you is to give you a congratulations on Deer Valley now being the #1 school district in the state, taking that role from Chandler. And I was very proud to be able to retweet that when that happened for Deer Valley School District. But these projects bring a supply chain. It's not just the one company coming. If you look at Chandler and Intel, there are 47 companies that directly support Intel just in the Chandler market that are adding more capital investment and that recession-proof economy that the East Valley is known for. It brings more jobs, bringing more families into the school district. And as I said, thousands of indirect jobs in the semiconductor ecosystem with a $12 billion capital investment. I moved through that pretty quickly, just in interest and respect of your time, and would love the opportunity to answer any questions that you might have on this company considering locations in Deer Valley.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Mr. Miglerino, was there any information you wanted to add for the board?
No, just again, I think this is the start of a potential partnership for something that could be even larger than what was presented here because of some of the indirect benefits that would be realized. I did notice on all the slides, it did the slogan, Phoenix is hot. I think we've all evidenced that this summer as well. Just a observation on my part.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Dr. Finch, did you have anything you wanted to share with the board?
I just want to remind everyone that this is a preview, and if you have any questions or you think of questions during the week or the next 2 weeks, email me. I can get them to Christine to get them answered as well, and she will also be available when it comes back for a potential approval 2 weeks from now.
Okay. I'll do a quick round robin if there's no objection and just go board member by board member in case someone has a burning hot question, since that's the theme that they want to ask tonight. We'll start with Ms. Tweedy. Questions?
Oh, I don't have any questions, but thank you.
Okay, Mrs. O'Brien?
I do have a couple questions. Have any of the other entities that have been requested to give a letter of no objection, denied it or rejected it?
Board Member O'Brien, no. No one has denied or rejected the request yet.
Okay, and then the 700 new jobs you talked about at Honeywell, that's the Honeywell in our district? Is that correct?
Yes, Board Member, that is correct.
Thank you so much for your patience this evening and for the information.
It's truly our pleasure. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. Mrs. Reed, do you have any questions at this time?
No, I don't have any questions. Just want to say thank you for sitting through the 2.5 hours with us so we could hear your presentation. I appreciate it. Look forward to hearing more at the next meeting when it comes to a vote.
Okay, so I don't have any questions either. Just again, would like to also express my appreciation for the presentation. And I hope that our long meeting hasn't discouraged the company. Sometimes our meetings are longer, but so thank you very much. Board members, if any questions come up in the meantime, please send those to Dr. Finch and he will forward them on to the appropriate person.
Vice President Frank, if I might just for the board, just to set a scope and scale of this project for you. This, if you look at an Intel fab, their fabs are about $5 billion on each fab. So this in scope and scale is significantly larger than an Intel fab. And I will share with you that if this begins construction in Arizona in 2021, it will be the largest private sector construction project in the entire country.
Oh, it's impressive. Okay, thank you.
Ms. McKay, I'd like to tell Ms. McKay, we actually found out today that we made the Forbes list of top 50 businesses to work for in Arizona, so you can retweet that.
Dr. Finch, I'll be jumping on your Twitter account and retweeting that in just about 2 seconds.
You're shameless.
Awesome. All right. So if there's no other objections, why don't we move back to the questions on the COVID report? And I'll just go board member by board member. I'll start with Mrs. O'Brien. Do you have any questions for Dr. Zurbach or Dr. Galligan or any of our other presenters this evening?
I do. Thank you very much, Ms. Frank. I will start with Mr. Miglerino. Do all of our buildings have the air purging capability through the HVAC?
Vice President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, I don't know that I heard all of the question. Do all of our systems have?
Sorry.
Do all of our buildings have the ability to purge the air? Yes, it's an ASHRAE standard for us to have outside air be brought into into commercial buildings, and so through that mechanism is how we purge the air.
Awesome, thank you. For the free, safe learning space, I'm not sure who gets that question, but how were the spaces chosen or the sites chosen?
Ms. O'Brien, Vice President Frank, so in terms of the spaces, the 6 sites, they are spread across the district so that there is one that is at least semi-convenient in each region for the parents. And so Barb Irvin and her team, they looked at those sites. They also have their sites have already been running because they were the staycation sites that we have been using. And so that's how they were selected.
Thank you. And then regarding, if I heard you correctly, we opened registration for that free learning space, and then we stopped the registration on August 7th. I might have my date wrong.
That is correct. It was open for 1 week.
Okay. And then you explained that it would be 2 more weeks before we could potentially open registration up again. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, Ms. O'Brien, that is possibly correct. So we are working through that right now. Again, there are some limitations on the enrollment system for this in terms of how the actual enrollment occurs. And so we are, again, we are working through it, but at this time, it looks like that could be part of it. And also, that also is related to staffing too. So in order to provide the appropriate staffing that is needed, time is required for that.
So my question is it possible to, I understand the need for time to staff, the 2-week time frame to staff. Is it possible to keep enrollment open in a waitlist status rather than waiting 2 weeks before we open it back up and then finding out if we have additional students and then having that be another 2 weeks before we can staff? Does that make sense?
Ms. O'Brien, that's something that I can work with Barb and her team and then put in the board update for you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would just like to, in the return to learning section, I think that was Dr. Galligan who was had some slides, and one of the notations on there was about the number of district devices and that not all of our students are on the district devices. And I would just implore our parents, I think that it probably will help to alleviate a few of those bumps if our students are on our own Deer Valley devices, as well as give you a little bit of flexibility if you then have more than one. So it's more of a comment than a question. Thank you for taking the Zoom cameras issue back to your team. Dr. Galligan, I really do appreciate that. And I hope that we will continue to communicate with our leadership and staff the importance of grace and kindness, and that not all of our students have the same learning environment at home. And so I hope our teachers will remember that. And so while they might not think it's a conducive learning environment, it might be the best learning environment for that student in their home. One of the other things I read, heard, and talked about with folks was the need for more direction on Canvas with the kids and how to upload assignments. And I know you're working on that, but just wanted to come back to that because that was a pretty heavy theme in what I heard. And then my final, I guess, question or request, Dr. Finch, is that I would really like to request that our work session regarding how we solve some of those, come back to in-person learning. If we could have our first one next week, I think that would be incredible. I don't know if the capacity of our staff is there, but I do know that it is important to our community that we start talking about that and planning for that. So I know that we generally plan extra Tuesday meetings or extra meetings on the Tuesdays. So I would request our next one be on August 18th. Thank you, Vice President Frank.
Ms. Tweedy.
Thank you. So I have a few questions as well. So for the safe learning space, first of all, are we having different rooms by grade level, and what is the student adult ratio?
Ms. Tweedy, Vice President Frank, there are separate rooms that are being used for the free safe learning space. I believe we are looking at no more than 15 a room. I'd have to get you the exact ratio, Ms. Tweedy, in the board update, but there are numerous adults that we are looking to help staff the safe learning spaces. And part of that, Ms. Tweedy, is due to the younger students who need additional support with the technology and with switching with their schedules. And so there has been an additional request for help for them. And so we look to provide that extra support. We also have, Ms. Tweedy, some students with IEPs that have applied to get into the free safe learning space. And so we are also working to provide some classified para support for those students as well at the 6 sites.
Okay, so yes, in the board.
Say the students will be socially distanced, Ms. Tweedy, if that's what, if that was part of your question.
No, what I really want to understand as we discuss the back to school plan, I mean, I do obviously care if they're socially distanced, but can you explain the conditions in each room, how far they're sitting apart, the adult student ratio, and put it in a board report, because it's important to understand that. Also, I know we've made this request before, but even more importantly, in our board reports, I would like to know the number of COVID cases in Deer Valley and by location, specifically also including the safe learning spaces, so we can understand what's going on there as we roll back and what's working and what's not with that, because it'll be important for us to understand that. So I'm going to request again that those are in the board report. The other information I would like to know for our work session is for our work session, and these are two questions I have that I just would like to know as we come up with our plan for back to school. If we're offering online instruction and in-person instruction, are we legally required to provide busing still as we roll back? And then the next question I have, knowing that if we have to go with a small ratio or the potential that we would need to have unusable classrooms for sanitation procedures, do students have to attend their home school? Because I know with the safe learning space, they do not. So those are just, I think as we look at a back to school plan, that would just be good information to have. The next question I have, are we still having in-person preschool on August 17th, or are we waiting for us to hit the state benchmarks for those schools too? And just explain that decision.
Okay, Ms. Tweedy, there are, I think some of those questions, if I heard you correctly, you want in the board update, but I can answer some of those now. So if I worked backwards, as far as in-person preschool, and so we are moving forward with in-person developmental preschool to start on Monday, the 17th, as well as having the virtual option for the parents that select that as well. As far as some of your busing question, that would be something that I would need to look into. I would think that we would still be required for busing, but we can look into that more. And then your other questions I've written down here that we can look at that for the Friday update.
So could you just clarify, because I've gotten emails about this, why are preschools not required to meet the state benchmarks? Because I've gotten emails about this, so I'm just asking it so we can answer it.
So Dr. Galligan can jump in here too, but so in terms of for preschool is governed under a different body of rules for us. And so they are not under the K-12 guidelines. Dr. G, do you want to add into that? But that in short, Ms. Tweedy is the reason for that.
They're not included in the health department guidelines?
Ms. Tweedy, we couldn't hear you. Dr. Galligan will add on and then we can hear. Sorry, because we have to mute every time we talk.
Vice President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, in the last executive order, it gave us direction for preschool to start. So that is, we're just following the executive order, as well as our community ed preschool has been in session since August 3rd. So for the most part, we are working to get our preschools back under that executive order.
So just for clarification, Dr. Galligan, the preschools aren't included in the health department guidelines? That's what I'm just trying to understand.
Vice President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, I would have to go back and look at that. I was talking more about the Governor Ducey's executive order, his last executive order.
Okay, could you include that in the Friday update as well? And then just my final question, and then I'll let it go, and this can also be in the Friday update, just for my understanding. So when we were talking about synchronous and asynchronous learning, just so I can understand, so when there's a virtual class that includes both, I know because the word learning's after it, there could be different interpretations, but is the asynchronous part supposed to be independent practice of a skill already learned as opposed to new learning? I guess that would be my first question. And my second question is, I know we've in normal school years, we have homework guidelines by grade level, so the amount of time a student should spend working outside the school day. And I would just like to request that that still apply this school year, so that when they hit their time for whatever it is at each grade level for homework, that they stop working and the parent email the teacher and just say, we hit the maximum homework. So I don't know, that's just my ask, but that's all I have to.
Okay.
Vice President Frank and Ms. Tweedy, we'll put that in the update, but I want to just clarify for the synchronous and asynchronous, your question was, is asynchronous only for independent practice, not new learning? Was that your question? Okay, I will clarify that in the update this week.
And if it's different by grade level, clarify what grade levels it's different by. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Reed, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a few questions and I'm trying to get through them pretty quickly. First, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Galligan and Dr. Zerbach and Mr. Miglorino for addressing a lot of the questions that I've had over the last couple of weeks in the COVID report. My first thing, I've got a couple of questions from parents that are in more business industry, and they're looking for a more robust COVID-19 plan, like their companies have. So I'm wondering if it's possible, as we are developing different stages of the plan, if we can add it to our DVUSD website and then have the schools add it to their individual websites for parents that are specifically looking for that. I know that we have a small kind of outline, but the information that we had tonight is not included in the update that was done on June 24th on our website. So if we could add that to it, that would be really helpful for parents. In regards to the safe learning space, is there going to be some sort of training for our staff members who are there to supervise and help students get on their Zoom calls and navigate Canvas? Since most of them haven't been tech savvy before, will there be training for them to be able to do that so they're not walking in blind?
Sure, Vice President Frank, Ms. Tweed, there is training that is planned for this week. We have a couple different sessions that are planned for them. So first of all, we have a shadow session that's planned for tomorrow, where our staff members that are not used to being in this particular setting will have a chance to shadow a current community ed staff member for the day. On Thursday, we have another session in the afternoon that is planned. That session is threefold. It has a component for social, emotional, and behavior management. The second component is for the technology side that will be led by Michelle Coots, and will provide a multi-hour training for them with doing the exact things that you mentioned, Ms. Reed, as far as accessing Zoom, making sure that we can turn on the computer or the iPad. And then there is a third component to that training, and that comes from Barb Irvin on the logistics of the flow of the day for the students in the safe learning space. And then on Friday, for paras who are used to working on the campus, they will not get the same exact training since they already have some of those experiences, Ms. Reed. However, there is a virtual Zoom call since the folks are across the district that will be led by Ms. Irvin. And she will, again, do an orientation of the logistics for the flow of the day for those staff members.
Thank you. And then as far as safety procedures go, I know at the beginning of the school year, when we have all of our documents that come home to sign, we sign our students' right to responsibility handbook and things like that. Will there be some sort of paper for parents to read over and to sign regarding our COVID-19 reporting procedures so that parents understand what those are? And can we make sure that those are also up on the website so parents understand? I don't know, there was a slide that Dr. Zerbach shared that was an excerpt from the DHS website. So parents know their responsibility in keeping their kids home and reporting.
Sure, yes, that excerpt was from us, not from DHS, but we can do that. There is a form, Ms. Reed, it's called the acknowledgement form that parents will be asked to sign. It is different from the waiver. So the waiver was something for the optional activities, but for activities that are not optional, it switches to an acknowledgement form. So we can have information for that put up again, because this has all changed in the last 7 to 8 days with some of the changing requirements from the governor and ADE. But we'll make sure that that is up for the parents.
Thank you. And then in the Friday update, can you give us a little bit more information about the procedures regarding the nurse's office? For if a student goes to the nurse's office sick and they're determined to have COVID, what our procedures and protocols would be to identify a second nurse's office if that nurse's office needs to be out of use for 24 hours?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you. In regards to face coverings, has that been updated in the dress code to establish maybe some inappropriate pictures or sayings that would be distracting on face masks?
That is, so the actual regulation was sent to Ms. Reed in the board update on Friday for the face coverings. As far as any items that would be inappropriate, those would already be covered under policy JICA. So that would be no different than if a student, say, for instance, wore a shirt that's inappropriate. And so that would already be included there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then one of the or several of the emails I've gotten have been in regards to special education and parents not being able to have their hours and minutes met for their students. Some parents haven't even heard from their coordinators yet. So if they've emailed the coordinators, they've emailed their teachers, and they still aren't getting a response, what would you like them to do?
Yeah, Vice President Reed, or Vice President Frank, Ms. Reed, I think that the parent would want to email the principal, right, and contact the principal if they have not received a contact yet from their service coordinator or their classroom teacher, as I'm sure that their campus administrator would help facilitate that process as soon as possible. If for whatever reason they still did not receive communication from that, which I don't think that would happen, because I know the administrators would be in touch, then they could certainly contact Dr. McCusker for that. But I do believe if they contact the local administrator, they will get that resolved as soon as possible.
Thank you. And then the guidance, the legal interpretation that we had regarding IEPs that came out that you guys discussed in cabinet yesterday, could you put that in the board update so we could get a little bit more in-depth information as to where we're at with all of that? And then I'd like to make a request, Vice President Frank, that we be able to have this either as an agenda item or a study session at some point so we can better understand the current state of IEPs and 504s with our virtual learning.
Okay, I will forward that to Mrs. Ordway and discuss where that would be the most appropriate to place that, whether it's an agenda item or a separate session.
Thank you. And then if it's possible, as far as ISNT goes, I don't know how many people we have that are working to troubleshoot, but in speaking to some of the teachers and principals over the last couple of days, they thought it might be useful and helpful to have a member of ISNT that is specifically tied to specific schools. So if they had an issue, there was somebody directly that they could reach out to. And then I've gotten requests for more teacher training on Canvas, even if it's done by grade level, so they can be a little bit more specific, especially for our K-3s. And then as a parent, if there was some sort of Zoom call or online training that we could participate in, I think that parents would like to be able to do that so they could better understand how to navigate it with an expert on the call too. And I think that is it for right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Reed. Also, if you don't mind, if you could just send me an email with your specific agenda request. It's late. I want to make sure that I understand it and I captured everything correctly.
Absolutely.
That would be helpful for me. I have a couple of quick questions. Hopefully they're quick questions before we wrap this up, so I appreciate everyone's patience. First question is for Dr. Galligan. I have received some comments from teachers who were wondering why, the elementary teachers, why they weren't allowed to use Google Classroom. And I thought I remembered it way back a couple months ago that elementary teachers or K-8 teachers were going to have the choice between Google Classroom and Canvas. And if you could just speak to that to help people understand.
Vice President Frank, actually that is very true. Going into the summer, we had determined that there would be that choice. And then Governor Ducey chose to push back the first start of day for us to August 17th. And then you all, our school board, chose to push it back to October 9th or starting on the 14th. The parent survey from the Home Learning Spring school closure indicated pretty loudly that parents wanted a single platform for all the kids so that they didn't have to maneuver through multiple platforms. That also came out fairly loudly from the Deer Valley Stakeholder Committee, the parents and the community members that are on that team. And then when we looked across 39 schools and ensuring that we could maintain a scope and sequence and pace during this, we thought, hopefully, just the first few weeks and then the first quarter, but knowing that more than likely we will have kids potentially in and out of in-person school and virtual or distance learning, that we needed to have a single platform that was Canvas, because we already had Canvas K-12, and that's why we made that decision. We talked, I sent information out to administrators first, probably early in July when Governor Ducey made his first decision. And then after you all made your decision, a long bit of information went out to our teachers. I know that Canvas is definitely more difficult in the long run, but it does have some features that Google Classroom does not. Google Classroom is a content management system. It's not a learning management system. Plus Canvas directly aligns with our Power School and our gradebook system. So it for those reasons, but mainly because our parents in both the initial survey and going into longer distance learning said we just have to have one place we can go. And I know not all of our parents are happy about that either, but we're doing our very best.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that explanation. That makes perfect sense. I just wanted to be able to have an answer when people asked me about it. My next question is also for Dr. Galligan, and you may not have an answer this evening. So this may be something to go in a Friday update or in our work session. So for those online academy students who are planning to stay or enrolled to be online for the full year, but they're associated with a specific classroom teacher and receiving both synchronous and asynchronous learning, what happens to those students when in-person learning resumes? Presumably they'll stay online. Will they still have those Zoom meeting opportunities? Will they still have small group opportunities? How does that look for them? How do they continue their connection with the teacher they started off with and with the campus?
Vice President Frank, that is the $1 million question right now.
Does that mean I get $1 million for asking it?
You should.
Okay,
if I can answer it, I should get $1 million too.
Okay. Or we'll split $1 million. Either way, that's fine with me.
Right. Our challenge is we discussed this summer in the Return to Learning team with that model that was the on-flex model. And just this summer, there were just so many challenges for us to work through. We just didn't have the time to figure it out. I can't say that we'll be able to figure it out yet, but I will say this is a topic that is heavy on Jenna's shoulders, on my shoulders, on Gary's shoulders, and we want to make it right for our students and our parents, but we also have to be organizationally aware of our staffing. So that's where that stands right now. I don't know that in either this update or the next update, or even possibly that third update, we will have much, but we will do our best to keep you apprised of where our conversations are.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And I have one more question. This is for Mrs. Moffitt. I know we've talked in the past about employees working from home versus employees working at a work site. And with Governor Ducey's safer at home orders, obviously there are some jobs that can't be done at home, but I'm just curious, are all the employees who could work from home still being allowed to work from home? I know that some of our teachers wanted to work in the classroom. Some of them wanted to continue working from home. And then there's other employees, such as counselors, for example, that I would assume much of their work at this particular time could be done at home. I'm hearing some chatter from different groups, counselors and others, that some of them are being required to go work at a work site. And I'm just concerned because the more people you have at a work site, regardless of your ventilation or whether you have one person in a room or whatever, the reality is the more people you have at a work site, the more risk there is for the individuals there. So if you could speak to that, I'd appreciate it. And I know I've asked you about this before.
Oh, no worries. So there has been no change to our last discussion, actually. I guess there has been, because now we have on call as a work option. But each employee, again, each evaluator, or I'm sorry, worksite supervisor looks at each single person that's in their DAC and determines what type of work needs to be performed. And if that work can be performed at home, then the employee can work from home. And as you mentioned, some of our employees prefer to still report to on-site work. I'm not aware of any complaints coming from counselors, and perhaps one might come my direction now after this meeting, but the same rule would apply to them. Unless there was some specific function that needed to be performed on-site and there was a request by the supervisor for the counseling team to come and maybe distribute technology or do something like that, each employee still has the opportunity to voice their concern and indicate why they would not be able to do that. And if they did not want to disclose their disability or a private situation, then their supervisors know they need to send those concerns to human resources, and we manage those. So there has been no change since
Okay.
the last meeting on that.
So if an employee, if a supervisor said to an employee, no, I want you at the work site, and the employee disagreed and felt like all of their job responsibilities could be done from home. So if there's a disagreement, who do they then go to?
They come to human resources. They should, and many of us respond to those requests, mostly because now we have 4,000 employees back, and there are a lot of questions. So we do have the staff coronavirus info location where people can ask, of course, their COVID questions. Lisa Pittman, Employee Relations Coordinator, Judy Williams manages those, Christy Bushnell-Trevor, and myself, we all manage those questions and try to respond as fast as possible. But again, for all of those same reasons, it does take some time to staff the areas that we quickly need to start building a workforce for, and that is our learning sites and our special education learning opportunities that are coming just around the corner.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that information and for that detailed response. So that's it for my questions. Dr. Finch, did you have anything you wish to add to the meeting? I see Mrs. O'Brien has her hand raised.
So sorry, I had one question I forgot to ask Mr. Miglerino.
Go ahead.
Mr. Miglerino, I know that we had a power outage problem at Stetson Hills, and I believe that was all fixed as you reported in a previous meeting. Is that campus able to accommodate teachers who might want to teach from their classroom now?
Vice President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, yes, power was restored to the Stetson Hills campus the second week of July. And so we did have a delay in prepping the campus as we do over the summer. But we sent some additional staff to the campus to be able to provide the needed manpower to be able to get them ready. So yes, there would be no reason that staff could not be at Stetson Hills, as far as I know.
Awesome. Thank you so much for making that happen, given the circumstances.
Well, no one wants to be without power in July, that's for sure. Dr. Finch, anything you'd like to add to the meeting, share with the board?
Sure. As there was some discussion about potentially opening, as you know, I think I've been updating you in the Friday update. I've been on all those state committees, and they are starting to shape up with pretty decent recommendations, with pretty decent guidelines. I think I've been forwarding those to you. So that's good. EFRG is involved in that. NEVIC, our 8 sister schools that we work with, we have a general idea of kind of where we're headed as a group. So that's a plus. And also the task force for the governor that we were on with the county, they have offered to help us if we wanted some additional guidance as a board. So I might be able to snag one of their health experts to come as well to kind of explain what their recommendations are as we talk about possibly opening in the future.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So let's wrap this up. Future, if there's nothing else, future meetings and dates are posted. I move we adjourn the meeting at 10:17 p.m.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Good night, everyone. Thank you.